can be fun.
Now, Rebecca, this obesity problem is nothing new.
Well, right. There is a culture of obesity in baseball that has been around for years. I mean, coaches even sub in healthy pinch runners instead of encouraging their overweight players to hustle, depriving them of the only cardiovascular exercise they might have a chance to get.
And a lot of these athletes have been playing baseball since they were kids.
Well, right. So they might have never learned any healthy habits.
Baseball is fine in moderation, but many of these men spend over 200 days a year playing it, and that adds up.
The program encourages players once an hour to take a 15-minute break from baseball to do something active, like go up and down some stairs, go for a walk, or play some basketball.
All right, well, thanks, Rebecca. If you're a baseball coach and you're worried about your players' health, go to takethefield.gov for a list of healthy activities and nutritious snacks. Coming up next, is America brains get worse hearing words correct?
This is the Onion News Network.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, and you can weigh in, join the discussions, talk about whatever is important to you. 603-283-6160 if you would like to do that. Again, that number is 603-283-6160. And with you in the studio tonight, it's Aria.
And Mr. Penguin.
And I'm a little bit tired and beaten because my gaming computer started crashing at random a few weeks ago. And I thought at first that it was because of the controller, like the video game controller. And I realized that's a weird thing to conclude because that doesn't normally cause full-on system crashes, just reboots out of nowhere. It wasn't like the game crashed. The entire system rebooted without warning, without any error messages being recorded in Event Viewer. Super fun to try to figure. The only errors in Event Viewer actually at that time were related to...
You'd be surprised at what can cause a computer to crash.
Right. That's why I wasn't terribly shocked about the controller thing. I was like, all right, so the USB port's probably shorting out or the controller sending too much voltage. Who knows?
Yeah. Switching ports, there's USB 2.0 and USB 3.0. And if you got a USB 2.0 device that has a cable that's not shielded to 3.0 standards, or at least something to that around that, you end up having weird issues with Wi-Fi not working, totally different devices.
See, I didn't try a different USB port. I just unplugged the controller because the game I was playing at the time was better with the keyboard and mouse anyway. So that seemed to resolve the issue. No more crashes. I played a much more graphically demanding game for hours at a time without issue until I wanted to play something else, and I returned to the controller issue. Ultimately, it turned out to be because there were two versions of some Microsoft game input thing installed, had to uninstall the old one.
Oh.
Yeah, very weird. And Windows did that all by itself, despite Windows updates being disabled and everything you can do to keep Windows from doing crap like that behind your back, I do. But Windows still does crap like that behind your back because it's Microsoft, and of course they do. So that was frustrating, but then it just started crashing at random without any explanation. So I started monitoring the heat because that's the obvious thing, right? You're playing a video game. It's a new video game released in 2024.
Well, yeah, but that shouldn't cause it to crash anymore. It should cause the system to pop up a message saying shutting down, overheating, and then shut down properly. So you shouldn't be aware of it. It shouldn't just power off on you like that. That
would be great if they did this such thing. But
that's how it's designed. So that's why I'm wondering what went on there.
I don't think I ever really identified the exact issue that was going on because it just kept crashing. I managed.
Was it getting too hot?
I don't know. I undervolted the CPU and I underclocked it by just tiny amounts. And that gave me a little bit more stability. The heat was only peaking at about 60 degrees Celsius, which isn't great. But for AMD, that's more or less within normal operating range while gaming. Got it down to about 45 to 50 degrees.
That doesn't sound warm to me at all. It sounds totally reasonable.
Right. AMD, those climb up to 80, 85 degrees Celsius regularly all the time, and they carry on just fine. But that wasn't the case here. So I started monitoring the heat and all of that, and nothing made any sense. So stress tested it. Everything came through just fine. There's no issues with this computer. Everything works great. But when you boot up a game, it just crashes. It full-on reboots, no explanation. And some games you can play, but this cutscene will make it crash 30% of the time. and that doesn't autosave after this cutscene. So when you do get through it and you immediately die,
you know what's funny
it's
is
bizarre.
this sounds like an issue with Intel processors, but you said you were using AMD.
Yes.
And with the Intel processors, it has to do with like decompression is like when it crashes, and it only happens I think on like the 13th and 14th generation, like i9s or something, or i7 and i9 maybe. But obviously it's not the same issue because it's a totally different processor. But
I decided it has to either be a dying motherboard or a dying power supply. Because I've more or less ruled out everything else. The RAM was fine. The drives were fine.
I'm gonna take an educated guess. It was probably the motherboard, maybe the CPU.
Yeah, in either event, I was going to have to replace something expensive. And if you're going to replace your motherboard, you might as well go ahead and upgrade. So I did all of that, and I ended up purchasing DDR5 and a motherboard and CPU and all of that accommodated it. And then I just spent all day today messing with this thing because it wouldn't turn on. I mean, it would turn on, right? But nothing would happen. And so after, a minute or so, I would unplug it and check this cable and that cable, plug everything back in. I ended up swapping the power supply out for my older power supply. And then the strangest issue I've ever seen was that I tried to use the main motherboard connector for the power supply, right? That came with the new power supply with the old power supply because they're exactly the same. But it didn't work. It didn't work until I put the old connector back on the old power supply. The new connector that is absolutely identical. It's like if you plug a device into your television with one HDMI cable, it works. But if you use the other HDMI cable, it doesn't work. Even though the HDMI cable itself is totally fine. So I ran into that. And then after 2 hours of messing with this thing, trying to figure out why is my DRAM light on the motherboard just shining bright yellow and telling me that there's a RAM problem, trying to troubleshoot RAM issues. After 2 hours of that, I decided to just look online. And the number one piece of advice I saw over and over again was just wait 5 to 10 minutes. And I don't really do tech anymore, but I used to back in the Windows XP, Windows Vista, Windows 7, and the beginning of the Windows 10 era. We're not going to talk about Windows 8. I did IT, and the idea of turning your computer on, if it didn't turn on within the first 15 seconds, there was something wrong. There was never any, just let it sit there for 5 to 10 minutes and it worked. So I read that and I was like, that's absolutely crazy. I'm not even going to try that. I went back to troubleshooting. Nothing worked. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to leave it on here after all. So I went upstairs, did my makeup, and came back down about 15 minutes later. And sure enough, for whatever reason, if you have DDR5, you have to let it just sort of sit there on its first boot for 10, 15 minutes. I don't know exactly how long it took, but that's absolutely bizarre.
Couple minutes, probably. Yeah.
And I've never encountered anything like it. And I did this on the same day that my other job is getting an entirely new computer system built from scratch because the old one apparently was built in some programming language that is now obsolete. And they decided, instead of trying to continue band-aiding this, let's just build an entirely new one from scratch. And so some of these stores, there's 8,000 of these stores throughout the U.S. We're number 42 to beta test this software. So it's like full-blown beta test mode. They're doing that today, and I get to go there when I leave here to go deal with that system failure after dealing with one most of the day. But I did find that there is a version of Windows 10 out there that is, I wouldn't say it's privacy-friendly, but it's more privacy-focused than the default Windows 10. And that was another weird thing I ran into. The last time I installed Windows onto a computer and it did not have any drivers whatsoever was Windows XP. That was 2001, maybe 2002.
It didn't need you to install drivers?
Windows XP did. And I think Windows Vista may have, but ever since Windows 7 and beyond, most of these drivers, like your audio.
Oh, they're installed automatically. It's detected and downloaded from Microsoft's website.
Well, it's not even downloaded. It's built into. It's so common that Windows just builds it into the system, or they include the driver in the Windows install. But not here. This is the first time I had to actually take a flash drive to another computer, download the LAN driver, and take it back there like it was 2005. It was crazy.
I see what you're saying. It's because, right. Obviously, you're not going to be able to download the LAN driver because it's, because if you have a connection, it will download other drivers for you, I believe.
Most likely.
Yeah.
But it was weird when I first booted it up, and it was like, you need to connect to a network. I'm like, there's a cable plugged in. You're connected to a network. Stop being stupid and go. But on the plus side, that allowed me to do the local account without any headaches because Microsoft loves collecting your data, just like Google and Apple and Twitter and everyone else. they're very evil and they like knowing everything they can about you. So they sort of have moved away from a local account that exists on your computer. And they now have these cloud accounts where you sign in. If you're entering a 4-digit PIN or something like that to sign into your computer, you have an online Microsoft account.
This stuff drives me nuts. I've only really experienced it like once or twice, like once with Microsoft Office and like once with, it wasn't even with Windows directly. I think it was like with HP, but maybe part of it was Windows. I'm not even entirely sure, but I couldn't believe like what people put up with. Like, what if I want to just use this computer without an internet connection? You can't.
You can, but you have to know how to set it up. And you have to jump through some hoops because Microsoft doesn't make it easy to do that unless you install Windows without any network drivers whatsoever, in which case you have no option to create this stupid online account. It forces you to create a local one. So that was sort of a nice little benefit. Maybe that's one of the privacy-friendly features that was included in this particular package of Windows 10.
Not including network drivers.
Well, yeah, because that way it doesn't get more private than that, right?
That is really funny.
So that's my current theory. And I was just surprised such a thing existed at all, considering like it's kind of pointless to have a privacy-friendly version of Windows. But one of the reasons that I've been doing this is I use ad blockers on the internet. And I don't think people really understand how bad the internet really is out there. Open your phone, open Google Chrome, click whatever random news article you might be interested in and scroll down a little bit, and then just look at the page that you're viewing and calculate, estimate, probably not you because you're not the average user.
Yeah, I was just saying, I suspect I don't really know what you're talking about, except I might only in that every once in a while I'll open up a browser like Chromium and not have the ad blockers. So I'll be like, wait, what is this ad? There's an ad here. This is weird.
If you go to just about any website these days, you'll find that between 1/3 and 2/3 of the actual content is just ads. You have an ad at the top under the address bar. There's a video ad right there in the middle of the content, and then there's an ad at the bottom of the screen. And it's obnoxiously bad how advertising has really taken over the internet. And because of this, I use ad blockers. And for the longest time, I forgot that YouTube uses ad blockers. But lately, it has started defeating them. I'm surprised it took YouTube this long because they've always had a way to defeat ad blockers. If New York Times can do it, YouTube can certainly do it. You look like you were about to say something.
Yeah, so I'm curious. What ad blocker are you using?
Well, on my PC, I'm using AdBlock Plus.
Okay, so that doesn't work as well.
It doesn't. I'm also using DNS Guard, though, which has router level ad blocking.
Okay.
So I made all of those changes in my router, and I thought that maybe that would help because it's helped with YouTube ads in the past, especially on my television and things like that I can't just install an ad blocker too. But no, YouTube ads in particular, as of late, cannot be stopped.
So I think this is not 100% accurate. I believe uBlock Origin, it does actually block the ads still. Now there is a little bit of confusion because like Google during their beta blocking hasn't blocked everybody. It's only blocking a certain percentage of users. So you may not be seeing, if you're using like AdBlock Plus, you might not experience any blocking and it looks like it's still working. Whereas another user, will see that the ad blocking doesn't work anymore.
So what would you recommend for?
I think right now uBlock Origin is the one to go with.
Okay.
That seems to be working with YouTube.
Is that a separate browser or is that an extension?
That's an extension, and I don't know if that's available for like Chromium browsers or I know it works with Firefox, but I'm not sure about the other browsers.
You can also just use the Brave browser, which has an ad blocker built in.
Have you tried that with YouTube, and does that work with YouTube?
I have not.
You have not.
But even if you do manage to get an ad blocker to work, quote work with YouTube, it doesn't help a whole lot. And what YouTube has done instead, they've injected server-side advertising or something. I don't know. I'm not a YouTube technician, so don't quote me on that. But the result is that your ad blocker may detect the ad, and then you just have 30 seconds of blank screen before the video starts.
That's new. I haven't seen that.
It is very new.
If they're actually inserting the video or like black like actual frames into videos, that would be really interesting.
Well, ordinarily it would be just an advertisement, but your ad blocker stops the advertisement, but it can't stop that 30 seconds of ad space apparently. So you just have to deal with all of the interruptions and crap anyway.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I don't know if that is or is not. Like you would think that would be something that you could probably cut out still somehow, but it would have to like cache the video farther in advance of actually getting to that ad.
I look forward to seeing the war between YouTube and ad blockers continue because, yes, they'll find a way to fix this. They always do. And YouTube will find a new way to undo it, and they'll find a new way to put it back in.
There's another great solution to these problems, and I highly encourage people to do this. Don't use YouTube. Go to another site. There are other sites like Dailymotion and I'm trying to think some of the other ones. What's the
Well, there's Odyssey.
Odyssey, yeah, that was the one I was thinking of. That was the second one I was thinking of that came to mind. But like, yeah, there are other solutions other than YouTube. YouTube is not like the only place to find videos.
It's not, but YouTube has such an abundance of content,
and that's
newly created.
That's a
original
self-inflicted
content.
problem because by continuing to go there, nobody puts their videos up on other sites. So just whatever you do, just start using other sites. It doesn't have to be all the time. You can still use YouTube, but just start using other sites because that way, people on YouTube are incentivized to publish their videos on other sites as well.
Really good advice because the YouTube censorship didn't seem to matter a whole lot to most people who got censored or who even knew about the censoring. And I think you do still encounter ads on Odyssey, but your ad blocker probably still works there because I can't imagine they're making that a priority. And they have other ways to earn money that aren't forcing you to be the commodity that they're selling to other companies, which is ultimately what advertising is. I hate advertising just in general, like the entire industry. It's broken, it's stupid, and it's intrusive, and it ruins our lives. And there are ads everywhere that we're passing on a continual basis that we don't even notice anymore.
Yeah, I don't really mind ads so much when they're not obtrusive. Like I've never like for example, Google like their text ads, for example, never bothered me. Although there are some similar types of text ads, I think on I don't know what search engines, but they kind of get in your way and you have to scroll down. That I do not like. But in little ads, like if you go to a website, maybe a smaller website, and there's like an advertisement for a specific product, or maybe an associated product or something like that, that doesn't bother me either. It's the advertising that is everywhere that just drives me nuts, where they go overboard, like maybe YouTube videos right in the middle of your YouTube video.
That's obnoxious.
That's obnoxious. Or
especially when like YouTube doesn't give any consideration to where would be a good commercial break and where wouldn't be.
Right.
And like, if it's going to do that, it's got to provide end users with the tool, the people uploading the videos, it's got to provide them with the tools to say, hey, you can, if you must put an ads in my video, this is a good spot.
I don't even mind so much the ads in like YouTube videos, like especially the ones that YouTubers like put in their own videos, because you can just skip past them, right? Like, yeah. And the other things I don't like are like ones where, and I don't experience this, like you probably experience this, and most people probably experience this, but like ads, there's like advertising in like Windows itself, like in the start menu or start bar, I think.
Is there?
Yeah. And I don't know exactly where or when this occurs, but like, yeah, like there, as I've seen it, I just don't know. Like I'm not a good person to describe when or where it happens because I don't use Windows, but
it sounds like one of those things that I would just turn off by default, because when you first set up Windows, there are a lot of checkboxes. Well,
it might be that you're using like the Pro Edition and it's not in the Pro Edition, but it's in the Home Edition. True. That's like there's other aspects of this. So like I don't know exactly under what circumstance. I do know like their security updates will like insert ads and stuff on YouTube from time to time for like new versions of Windows that come out to try and force people to upgrade, that kind of thing.
They're obsessed with getting people to upgrade or update to Windows 11, which as far as I can tell is the worst thing that's happened since Windows 8. And that's because it's primarily returned to the look and feel of Windows 8 with this stupid tile set. Because
really?
Yeah, and I don't know why they did it. Windows 10 worked just fine. It fixed
They reverted back in Windows 10, right?
Yes. They were like, oh, yeah, people hated Windows 8. It sucked. We wanted one operating system for your Xbox, for your phone, and for your computer, and everyone hated it.
Yeah, the convergence. Everybody hated it. Yeah, it doesn't matter what distribution or what operating system you used. Everybody who merged and went to this convergence style, they lost a market share.
Yeah, I want my computer to look and act like a computer, not a tablet and not an Xbox.
Right.
If I wanted to interact with an Xbox, I would buy an Xbox. But that seems to be what Microsoft is trying to do. And to be fair, Windows 11 hasn't gone all the way back to Windows 8. But you're gonna end up having to install Classic Shell on it again, just like it was 2012.
There are so many things I can complain about with the direction that industry has gone, over the years.
Good,
it's literally a downhill since probably since the 90s at a minimum, if not even earlier than that.
When Google Chrome first came out, it was groundbreaking. And they even released a really long comic book that I read online, that was available online, about the many reasons they wanted to fix the internet and just web browsing in general. It was because it was overtaken with ads, it was slow, it was clunky. Firefox was the leading browser then. And Chrome came out and just blew everyone else out of the water. And now Chrome is every bit as bad as Firefox ever was. And I think Firefox is probably the superior browser at this point. Even Opera seems to be making a comeback. And I did not see that one coming.
See, I never really got on board with Chromium being Chrome being better or anything like that. Like, I understood that there were some advantages, and I could see the advantages a little bit, but I never thought it was enough to make. It never made me switch. Like, it was never not enough.
Originally, it was faster than anything else out there.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. It's definitely a little bit faster, or it has been, at least in the past. I'm not sure where they. And it depends on like what metrics you're like comparing to. So like one might have a faster JavaScript engine, whereas the other one maybe has a little bit slower, but then the other's got a faster rendering engine. And so it's not always as clear cut, I think, as it's made out to be. But the thing that drives me nuts about Mozilla is that they've done a lot of things that the industry has done, and they're malicious. And it's not like,
they're supposed to be the good guys, right?
They are, absolutely. Yeah. I still think they're producing a better browser when it comes to like privacy and things like that, but they're still doing things that like they shouldn't be doing. And it's like for example, they send your data, your private data, how you're using the browser back to Mozilla unless you turn it off. It's the same kind of garbage that that Google is doing with Chrome. And it's just like, anyway, that's what actually keeps me on Firefox humorously, because I know Chrome, whatever Google is doing is worse.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Look guys, they used to have "Don't Be Evil" in their platform. They had like 7 principles, and like rule number 1 at Google was "Don't be evil." At some point, they took that out. Well, and I don't know what else to say.
The funny thing is, the CIA, I believe it was like was it the CIA? One of the federal organizations, they got funding like to get off the ground from the government, from the federal government. That's the funny thing. So to have a slogan of "Don't be evil" when the government is funding you, I just think that's hilarious.
Yeah, but the stuff they do now is leaps and bounds evil beyond.
I know. You're right. 100%.
I mean, they're the devil at this point, because they own YouTube, and they more or less control the entire internet, where if you tasked an average person with finding something on the internet and you did not allow them to use Bing or Google or Yahoo or any other search engine, I don't think they'd be able to find it. Google Chrome and Google in general have become the gateways through which everyone else seems to access the internet. When they need to find something, they just Google it, and that's how they get to where they go. But that first step is always Google or some other search engine, usually Google. And that's terrifying.
There is definitely something to be said about the centralization or concentration of the internet, and it's the result of Google putting a small set of sites at the top of your search results above all others.
And banning others for reasons that only they know. I tried to find Encyclopedia Dramatica recently, and man, they have been banned just about everywhere. Which is their own fault, because apparently they became racist Nazis, and it's not a pleasant sight. 603-283-6160. There is a war on porn. Whose side are you on? It's Free Talk Live.
You are supply, and lately there's lots of demand. I'm Holland Cook with Inflation Hacks. Before the pandemic, websites were offering to help you find a job. Back to the Future, the Help Wanted sign is everywhere. So this may be a good time to ask for a raise. The boss will be all ears if you've taken on extra duties while the shop is short-handed. Otherwise, test the waters. You will seem like quite the catch if you ask questions that demonstrate you've done your homework, and if you seem eager to pitch in. And when it's time to talk turkey, let them bring it up and assume it's their opening bid. said. And this is when to ask about benefits, overtime, and other details. For instance, is there a place to park? How are you coping? Post your inflation hacks at andyoucanquoteme.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone. 2 children have been killed and 9 other children injured in a stabbing attack in Southport, United Kingdom. A 17-year-old suspect is in police custody, but his motive has not been made public. Stuart Smith reports.
Parents speaking to local media in Merseyside have told of the cries of traumatised children as a man went on an attacking spree in a coastal town north of Liverpool. The local children's hospital has declared a major incident. The police say 1 arrest has been made and there is no wider risk to the public. The man's intentions and motivations have not been reported. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has called the incident horrendous and deeply shocking. Stuart Smith, London.
The son of jailed Mexican crime boss El Chapo is due in a Chicago court this week after surrendering to US authorities. It's reported he may have been working with officials on his surrender and fooled another drug trafficker to come with him. Mitch McCann reports.
Joaquin Guzman Lopez arrived at an airfield last week in New Mexico, where he was met by US officials who took him into custody. Alongside Lopez was Ismael Almayo Zambara Garcia, who it's reported was fooled into making the journey with Lopez, who was in on the scheme. Almayo is a well-known Mexican crime boss who founded the infamous Sinaloa cartel with the father of Lopez, El Chapo, who is serving a life sentence in a US prison. Almayo pleaded not guilty to drugs charges, including continuing criminal enterprise, narcotics importation and money laundering a short time after his arrest. His lawyer has told US media he was not in the country voluntarily and that he was forcibly kidnapped. Meanwhile, Lopez, who has been indicted on drugs charges, is expected to appear in a Chicago court later this week. Mitch McCann, New York.
UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres and other UN officials have condemned Saturday's rocket attack on a football field in the occupied Golan Heights. At least 12 people were killed, mainly children and teenagers, and fears are mounting of a full-blown conflict amid the latest attack between Israel and Hezbollah. Jody Jacobs reports.
The Secretary-General has called for restraint, fearing escalating violence in the region. In a statement released over the weekend, Antonio Guterres said civilians and children in particular should not continue to bear the burden of the horrific violence. It went on to say that the Secretary-General is urging all parties to exercise maximum restraint and reiterates once again his consistent calls on all concerned to avoid any further escalation. Another statement released by the UN Special Coordinator for Lebanon also condemned the attack, Araldo Lazario, calling for civilians to be protected. Jody Jacobs, New York.
Olympics officials called off the triathlon event on Monday due to poor water quality in the River Seine. It's the second day of subpar water that's ruled out swimming events. If the water doesn't improve, the event could become a biathlon with just running and cycling.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. You are invited to join us. 603-283-6160 if you want to do that. Again, that number is 603-283-6160. With you in the studio tonight, it's Aria.
And Mr. Penguin.
And Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash, which is short for digital cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency made for spending. Dash transactions are irreversible, so Dash is great for merchants. Plus, its network is protected from 51% attacks by its chain locks technology. We want to say thank you to the Dash DAO, that's the Decentralized Autonomous Organization, for sending us 32 Dash per month for this sponsorship. It's easy to get and use Dash. You can learn more at dash.org. Again, that is dash.org. So check it out. It's a great cryptocurrency. I've always been a big fan of it. There was a controversy surrounding it when it first released about it being pre-mined or something, but that hasn't affected the usage or the value, really, of the Dash cryptocurrency. It's also more privacy friendly than something like Bitcoin or Ethereum. God forbid you use Ethereum. So check it out, dash.org. Now, do Satanists take over the world is the question that I had someone message me recently and ask me if the Olympic opening ceremony was actually satanic. For those who don't know, I am a Satanist, which means absolutely nothing, really. I mean, it honestly doesn't. It just means I'm an atheist with some spiritual beliefs that aren't worth getting into at this exact moment. And I like trolling Christians. And the best way to do that is to take all of the pagan mythology that they corrupted and turned into Christianity and turn it back into pagan mythology, which is what Satanism does. It's just paganism rewrapped in the Christian symbolism that Christians stole from paganism in the first place. And I think that's why it upsets them more than anything else, because they look at these symbols and they say, no, that's satanic. I was like, well, yes, it is satanic. Thank you. And then they have to face their past and the fact that they took that symbol and they just labeled it as satanic.
They're hypocrites.
Yeah, more or less.
Yeah.
And they're super upset, dude. They are always upset about something. Drag queens or schools or whatever, they're not upset about anything important. They're not upset about children being separated from families at the border. That would make sense. They're not upset about war or the rise in nuclear armaments throughout the globe or anything, or the Uyghur genocide going on in China. They're not upset about any of that. They're upset about drag queens at the Olympics. And my response to this was, I don't know. I haven't seen the opening ceremony because I don't care about the Olympics. And I have things to do that are more important than watching this. So I have not seen the Olympic ceremony, and I'm not going to ever at any point. I do know they had Gajira, a French metal band, opening there. And that was an interesting development I did not see coming, because metal is not typically mainstream enough to be featured on something like that. But apparently conservatives are upset because of something that looked like the Last Supper. It was like drag queens trying to do a rendition of the Last Supper painting by Leonardo da Vinci. I think, was it da Vinci who did that? Yeah, it was.
How does this fit into the Olympics, though?
I don't know, man.
I'm trying to understand this. Like, I think the Olympics are overrated as it is, but
without a doubt.
And there's a lot of evil aspects to the Olympics too. So I don't know, but
it's a great idea, right? That instead of killing one another, countries can just get together and just play sports, and maybe that will cause people to stop killing each other. It's a great idea.
Yeah, somehow I doubt it, but
well, it doesn't seem to have worked,
right?
Certainly. So this is from Forward.com, who I'm unfamiliar with. So I wanted to find out what exactly is going on here. Why are people upset with the Olympics, or why are conservatives upset with insert whatever noun you want? And you can probably find an article explaining why conservatives are upset with Teletubbies or Tickle Me Elmo, or insert whatever noun you want.
I feel like whenever there's an article, it never really gets down to like what exactly it is that they're upset about. Like they'll be upset about Teletubbies, but I don't understand what it is after I read the article that they're actually upset about.
This one might, and that was why I chose it.
Okay.
A beheaded Marie Antoinette sang opera. Lady Gaga did the can-can. I don't know what that is. Cartoon minions attempted to steal the Mona Lisa, and of course mimes were arrayed on the banks and bridges of a river as boats full of athletes floated in the pouring rain. That sounds miserable.
Definitely.
They described it as chaotic and surreal. It was not, to put it mildly, to everyone's tastes. Well, it's not going to be. And the ceremony drew particular ire from the Christian right, apparently for making light of their religion. The attention fixated largely on a fashion segment, during which drag queens and dancers vogued down a table runway on one of the pedestrian bridges over the river. As the camera zoomed into the scene, a central figure in blue wearing a halo-like headdress sat in front of a table with drag queens and models posed around her. It looked unmistakably similar to the Last Supper, Leonardo da Vinci's fresco of Jesus' last meal.
Wait, was this actually part of, or this nearby the Olympics?
It was as part of the Olympic opening ceremony. You know, they make a great big show of it, just like the Super Bowl halftime show. They did the same thing for the
I actually don't
ceremony.
really entirely know what we're talking about here on either of these fronts, but
these people have helpfully juxtaposed in a screenshot of this opening ceremony directly above the Last Supper.
So
I don't care what these people are saying. This could not have been accidental. They 100%. Like, some of these people are even wearing the same colors as their counterparts in the Last Supper. You can't do that sort of thing on accident.
It's all about sports, right? Like, that's what the Olympics is. So how does, I'm not quite sure I'm following, like, why is this in there at all?
I mean, because I don't. Well, the English, when they had it back in London, whatever, they had a giant Mary Poppins float down or something, right? And Mary Poppins has
So this
nothing
is
to do
just
with
kind of
swords.
normal. It's
It's just a way for them to show off. It's just a good
Interesting.
show. It's just how they open it. So Catholic bishops, American politicians, and various online talking heads have criticized the scene, but the creator said the scene was not inspired by the Last Supper. It was intended to be a celebration of Greek gods that harkened back to the roots of the Olympic Games in Athens. If any painting inspired the scene, it was the Feast of the Gods by someone. And now I'm curious what this painting looks like, because the article here did not include it, but let me find it.
People in there clearly trans?
And
like
they're drag queens.
They're drag queens. Okay,
yeah.
so not trans, drag queens. Okay.
Yeah, and look, I got to tell you, well, I just found a link on the Christian Century, and like I really want to read that website now. However, I'm trying to find the painting that this person is talking about, and it's just taking me right back to the Last Supper. So I'll come back to that later. Indeed, a nude blue man sitting on a platter of fruit. It looks like the painting of the Feast of the Gods. The reason I can't tell is because it's almost identical to the Last Supper, with the exception being that it has a few people standing out in front engaging in what appears to be gluttony, which is normal for like Greek art. So I'm not seeing a huge difference between the painting that they're saying it was and the Last Supper. So maybe they're right.
Oh, so basically Christians are confused and getting upset over nothing.
Yeah, well, that's usually the case,
Okay.
right? But that's what seems to be going on.
So, all right, let's
here.
back up a second, because I'm still not sure I'm fully understanding why they're upset. So even if it was trans doing the Last Supper, why would this upset them?
Well, drag queens, not trans.
Sorry, drag queens. Why would drag queens doing the supper?
Well, they think it's mocking their religion for, I guess, people to...
Oh, my God.
To...
Like, seriously?
Like they were at the Last Supper?
Like, there's churches that are, like, pro-LGBTQ and stuff.
No doubt.
Like, I'm not, like, sure how that would be mocking necessarily. Like, I could see somebody trying to mock it that way, but I don't know. I think I feel like... I definitely feel like some sort of satanic thing would have been more... That's what I would have thought if somebody was going to mock Christianity, as opposed to, drag queens.
One doesn't need a drag queen to mock Christianity, though. And that's what I want to stress to Christians out there. Guys, you eat little crackers and drink grape juice, and you call it the blood and flesh of Christ, right? Like, you're mocking your own religion when you do that. That's crazy. Or even if it's wine. Yeah, I mean, you can do all the mental gymnastics you want, but you're drinking wine and you're eating a cracker. And you can say it turns into the flesh of God if you want, but I know it doesn't, because I know a little bit about chemistry and science and physics and the real world that we actually live in, and not this crazy way to make
Are they saying
believe.
it's actual blood, or are they saying it symbolizes blood?
Catholics at least
Okay.
insist that as they imbibe it, it becomes the actual flesh and blood of Christ.
Oh, that does sound crazy.
That it magically turns from wine into blood. And Southern Baptists and others, they go through the motions and they mimic things, and they hold up a little cup of grape juice and they say, this is the blood of Christ, and then you drink it. And it's like, I can't possibly make fun of this thing more effectively than Christians have, right? You guys are drinking grape juice and eating crackers, calling it the flesh of your God. I got nothing to add to that. Like, you're doing just fine on your own. You don't need the help of trans and drag queens in order to mock your religion. You guys are doing great. Mission accomplished. So that's where I stand with all of this. Plus, this Satanist takeover of the world thing that they're upset about, because the people at CERN, as we talked about last week, they did this satanic ritual looking thing, and they said they were just trolling or they were just having fun or whatever. Realistically, like, yeah, Satanists did kind of take over the world, I guess. And it's not necessarily a problem, and it's not as clear as you would think, because it's much more. Most people running around sympathetic to Satanists or agreeing with Satanists to one degree or another, they're not actually Satanists.
We got to back up a second. How did Satanists take over the world, and when did this happen?
Well, it's more like the world became secular and more humanist and more focused on humans and not crazy rituals like drinking grape juice.
So from an extremist Christian perspective, the world became Satanists because it became more secular.
Yeah, more or less.
That kind of makes sense to me. Like,
and they're
from that very, very extreme perspective. Yeah.
But see, they don't see it as secularism. They see it as Satan has taken over and taken prayer out of schools and taken the Bible out of schools, and they just see the world belonging to the devil and to devil worshipers because of things like what's happening at CERN and politics. And then you have people like the Pizzagate thing that they're convinced we're all Satanists and child sacrifices. Like, these people are nuts. And this has been going on at least since the 90s and the satanic panic going on back then. And it's just, it died down a bit, but it's always been there, just bubbling beneath the surface.
98% of the population is nuts.
Yeah. And, the people out there drinking grape juice. The amazing thing is that they love telling trans people that they're crazy. I'm like, honey, you just drank grape juice and said it was blood. Like, you don't have any right to tell a dude in a dress that he's not really a girl, because that wasn't really blood. That was grape juice. But before we get more into the satanic takeover of the world, let's go to the phones. We do have Turd Ferguson on the line from Pennsylvania. Turd, you're on Free Talk Live.
Yeah, so putting the word out ahead of the curve. The debt ceiling suspension is set to expire on January 1st of next year.
What is expiring?
The debt ceiling suspension.
Debt ceiling.
Okay.
Yeah, and so in late November, inevitably, in late November, early December, you're going to hear the same crackpot people who always talk about it propose that we quote unquote mint the coin in order to pay off the national debt. And I actually published an article on endingpolitics.com a couple of days ago about this. And the people who proposed this crazy crackpot idea are actually, for some reason, regarded as pretty smart. I'm
not sure it's a crackpot idea. I mean, the entire U.S. financial system is crackpot itself. So if you just made a new coin to just say, oh, now it covers all of that imaginary money.
Wouldn't that teach people not to loan money to the U.S. government?
Well, the thing is, I mean, even it's not even for the economic ideas that you're talking about as a crackpot, but it's crackpot specifically because even though they claim that it's legal, it's actually not. Like, all the people that we expect to know, like, the laws around economics in this country, like Paul Krugman, even the idea of actually minting this is completely illegal. And what they rely on to talk about the legality of it is this sort of obscure law that was passed all the way back in 1996, 31 USC 5112K, which basically says that the Treasury can mint commemorative coins in platinum at any denomination it wants. So their idea is they can kind of exploit this law.
I mean, that sounds like that law is pretty airtight. If that is, in fact, what the law says, then that does allow them to just print up a $1 trillion platinum coin.
Well, the problem is that there are other laws that already existed on the books and have existed for much longer that law doesn't supersede or renders useless. So, like I'll give you
the government would never break the law.
I mean, this is kind of all a mute point, like, because they could just
do what they want.
They could just write another law, and it completely undermines any other law that says otherwise.
Would you feel better if they passed a new law?
They'd have to write another law, but the problem is actually the Republicans, as they get more and more economically reasonable, not that they're reasonable yet, but they're getting more and more reasonable seemingly as time goes on. It would have to obviously pass the House with a more than 50% of the vote, and then pass the Senate, and the filibuster in the Senate, which requires 60 votes.
I got to tell you, man. If most people out there believe that this magic coin is going to solve all of their problems, and you're out there going, well, it may or may not solve all your problems, but you're not allowed to do it anyway, you're immediately trying to popularize an unpopular idea, and no one's going to care whether or not it's legal if it was going to solve their problems. The problem here is that people have been convinced that it will solve the economic problems.
Right. Well, and aside from all that, and let me just tell you about why they won't be able to do it anyway.
Because it's illegal. We've gone through that.
Well, there's also the problem of the Fed, and the Fed is given by the Glasso and Federal Reserve Act of 1913 full power in this country to control the money supply.
Yeah, but the government does what it wants.
Hold on. So actually, even though that the Treasury can mint commemorative coins, it can actually only even do that after they've been given a print order from the Fed to expand the money supply. So if the Treasury started going, well, we're going to go ahead and mint this coin, they actually wouldn't even be able to do it without the permission of the Fed in the first place. The Fed is a privately owned institution. It's not owned by the American people or the government. It's owned by the banking cartel. So the
but
banking
none
cartel
of this matters to the core issue that is the government's going to do what it wants.
It does the banks. What do you think? You think the banking cartel, the people that own our politicians, are going to allow them to pay off the debt with fake money and allow them to lose?
It's only being paid in fake money. You're acting like this coin is somehow faker than the U.S. dollar. It's all fake.
Well, here's the thing. It might be fake to you, Arya, but when
fake.
You can take that money and you can buy a boat.
Do you know what fiat is?
Arya, when you can buy a boat with it, it's very much not fake.
And how many boats do you think you could buy with $1 trillion platinum coin? Because I'm willing to bet you can buy a lot more than that with a $1 trillion coin.
Well, you can only buy a boat with it if the banking cartel accepts it, and they won't, because there's no way to actually divvy it out to them. There's no way that they can actually accept that and go buy something with it because it's a coin. So the only way and Jerome Powell is actually beholden not just to the banking cartel, but actually to Congress, because he has to go testify to them. So actually, there's no way he would ever do that, because he would lose his power, and they won't let, especially people like Jerome Powell, won't let his power to be dissolved.
I think I figured this out. Turd is coming at this from the point of view that the $1 trillion coin could somehow work. And because of that,
it's impossible.
And because it could somehow work, the Federal Reserve is going to stop it dead in its tracks. We're not going to allow that. That would actually work. We're not okay with that. Dude, it wouldn't work anyway. The Fed wouldn't care if $1 trillion got wiped out overnight. They still own everything. They still own the United States. They still own the United States government. It would make no difference to them whatsoever to receive this $1 trillion coin. It wouldn't even pay off the national debt. It would lower an imaginary money that represents.
What is the national debt at anyway?
I keep saying imaginary money. It would lower an imaginary number created by imaginary money, is what I was attempting to say. I don't know, something like 1.6 trillion, 1.7 trillion. It's an absurd number beyond
It's at least 20 trillion. It was the 1.7 trillion in like the 90s.
Yeah, you're right. I'm way off. It's well over 20 trillion by now. I can pull it up. I can look at
we should definitely
the
look this
national
up.
debt clock or whatever it is.
Yeah, the amount of the debt is just absolutely insane.
We were way off.
Yeah, like by what, twice, by half or something?
By the way, it's usdebtclock.org, and it's just horrifying watching some of these numbers just constantly
Let's hear it.
climb.
What is it?
It appears to be just over $35 trillion.
Not as bad as I thought. Not as bad as I thought.
Not as bad? That is way worse than I thought.
The last number in my head was about $20 trillion, and 30 trillion, given the rate of increase, is not that bad. I mean, look,
Turd thinks they're going to care about $1 trillion of that being wiped out. $1 trillion of that is meaningless.
Everything that's occurred over the last like 4 or 5 years, like, I mean, we've doubled, right? Like your $1 is now 50 cents. So the fact that it hasn't gone to 40 is actually kind of surprising to me.
Really good points. And like with a $35 trillion debt, none of this matters. And inflation is going to continue running its course, whether they print this $1 trillion coin or not. I'm of the mind that they should do it. They should print this. They should mint this coin that just completely pays off the national debt, and it'll be fine. The banking cartel won't stop it because they know just as well as I do that it doesn't matter. Well, it's not going to solve anything.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons they probably should do it is because it would teach people like how worthless the money supply actually is.
Yeah.
And
like, how much is your money really worth if the government can just print a coin that represents the entire wealth of your family and everything in the United States going back to its inception? This one little coin represents that. How much of a mockery is that making of your life?
We'll begin. People in the United States will begin to understand inflation and like why Venezuela, and if they even know where Venezuela is, where it is, or that it exists as it's like a country, right? Or Zimbabwe or something like that.
I doubt that Americans are ever going to understand inflation. right? Because they're still blaming Biden for the inflation that we're seeing right now. And obviously, this goes back to Donald Trump. It actually goes back quite a lot further than that, all the way to 1913. But it really did escalate as a result of COVID-19. We saw inflation numbers that we hadn't ever seen, and they ended up changing the way that they calculate inflation because of they changed that, I think, in the 1980s, actually.
Yeah, they did change it a while ago. I mean, the reasons were,
they were the same. At any rate, the inflation certainly skyrocketed as a result of COVID-19 and the CARES Act and all of that crap, which happened under Donald Trump. But whether Donald Trump had passed the CARES Act or not, whether he had gotten another 4 years in office, or whether Hillary had won that year, none of it would have mattered. You would still be about on the same track that you are right now of not being able to afford as much McDonald's as you were eating 3 or 4 years ago, which is the case. And watching groceries just get more and more expensive. Gasoline seems to be unaffected for whatever reason, but everything else around us is constantly getting more expensive. And every food establishment, every fast food restaurant at the very least, is losing money, even though during COVID-19, they saw a huge increase in the amount of revenue that they were generating. And that was because people had more money. They were being paid by the government to sit at home. Here's an extra $600 every single week to your unemployment if you take the time off because of COVID-19. I don't blame a single person for taking that. If you're making $500 a week at your job and the government says, hey, we'll give you $1,100 a week to stay at home, who wouldn't do that? I didn't do that, but most people would.
I don't blame the people who take the money. I blame the people who agree with the government doing it. That's the thing that I object to, because it's like you're hurting yourself and you're hurting me in the process, and I don't agree to that.
But if you want to know how this inflation really came about, it had a lot to do with that $600 extra everyone that was getting.
It wasn't even the $600. That's the funny thing. It was the money that was given. Most of the money that was given out was given to the corporations. It wasn't given to individuals. It was a really tiny.
But the individuals know about the stimulus. They know about the $1,200 check and then the $2,000 check that they got. By the way, I never got my $2,000 check, so I expect the Biden administration to send that on sometime soon because I never got that. However, they remember those things. They don't remember these giant corporations and Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, and AstraZeneca receiving massive amounts of money, or Moderna, the American.
I don't remember exactly what the figure was, but it was absolutely astronomical, the difference. It was something like 80% went to corporations and 20% went to you and I. It was absolutely
probably more
insane.
like 5% went to the American people because there was a lot of foreign aid included in the CARES Act as well.
There was also some going to small businesses as well. So
very little.
Yeah, nothing by comparison to the big corporations, though.
I think I remember $300,000 going to Pakistan to support its gender equality programs.
Which is honestly nothing, but yeah.
603-283-6160, that $1 trillion coin. What do you think about it? Will it help things? Will it make things worse? Or will it be completely meaningless? 603-283-6160. It is Free Talk Live.
Some of you have wanted to support Free Talk Live's mission on a monthly basis, but don't want to support Patreon. Now we have an alternative that also helps our premier streaming platform, Odyssey. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click Join at the top of the channel. You can subscribe for $5 per month, and unlike other subscription services, Odyssey adds their processing fee on top, so it'll cost a little over $5 per month, but Free Talk Live will receive the entire amount you pledged. Higher donation tiers are available if you're feeling so inspired. You'll get a special membership badge that's visible in the Odyssey chat room, and if we get enough supporters, we may enable members-only chat. This new subscription method is a great way to decentralize our direct listener support away from just Patreon and also support a libertarian-run business, Odyssey. Please visit video.freetalklive.com and click Join to subscribe to our Odyssey channel and help support spreading our message around the planet. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click Join today.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next, after the news, here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone. 2 children have been killed and 9 other children injured in a stabbing attack in Southport, United Kingdom. A 17-year-old suspect is in police custody, but his motive has not been made public. Stuart Smith reports.
Parents speaking to local media in Merseyside have told of the cries of traumatised children as a man went on an attacking spree in a coastal town north of Liverpool. The local children's hospital has declared a major incident. The police say 1 arrest has been made and there is no wider risk to the public. The man's intentions and motivations have not been reported. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has called the incident horrendous and deeply shocking. Stuart Smith, London.
The son of jailed Mexican crime boss El Chapo is due in a Chicago court this week after surrendering to US authorities. It's reported he may have been working with officials on his surrender and fooled another drug trafficker to come with him. Mitch McCann reports.
Joaquin Guzman Lopez arrived at an airfield last week in New Mexico, where he was met by US officials who took him into custody. Alongside Lopez was Ismael Almayo Zambara Garcia, who it's reported was fooled into making the journey with Lopez, who was in on the scheme. Almayo is a well-known Mexican crime boss who founded the infamous Sinaloa cartel with the father of Lopez, El Chapo, who was serving a life sentence in a US prison. Almayo pleaded not guilty to drugs charges, including continuing criminal enterprise, narcotics importation and money laundering a short time after his arrest. His lawyer has told US media he was not in the country voluntarily and that he was forcibly kidnapped. Meanwhile, Lopez, who has been indicted on drugs charges, is expected to appear in a Chicago court later this week. Mitch McCann, New York.
UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres and other UN officials have condemned Saturday's rocket attack on a football field in the occupied Golan Heights. At least 12 people were killed, mainly children and teenagers, and fears are mounting of a full-blown conflict amid the latest attack between Israel and Hezbollah. Jody Jacobs reports.
The Secretary-General has called for restraint, fearing escalating violence in the region. In a statement released over the weekend, Antonio Guterres said civilians and children in particular should not continue to bear the burden of the horrific violence. It went on to say that the Secretary-General is urging all parties to exercise maximum restraint and reiterates once again his consistent calls on all concerned to avoid any further escalation. Another statement released by the UN Special Coordinator for Lebanon also condemned the attack, Araldo Lazario, calling for civilians to be protected. Jody Jacobs, New York.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni says China can work with Western countries to guarantee stability, peace and free trade. Meloni met Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing on Monday in a bid to shore up trade relations after pulling her country out of China's Belt and Road Initiative last year. Our Italy correspondent Giles Gibson reports.
This is Giorgia Meloni's first official trip to China since taking office in late 2022, and also since her decision to ditch the BRI, China's global development strategy. On Sunday, Meloni signed a 3-year plan to deepen economic cooperation with China, both sides keen to show that Italy's exit from the BRI will not define their trade relationship going forward. However, trade relations between China and the EU are still very strained. This year, Brussels has placed tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, and it's also investigating state subsidies for solar panel manufacturers. Giles Gibson, Rome.
Olympics officials called off the triathlon event on Monday due to poor water quality in the River Seine. It's a second day of subpar water that's ruled out swimming events. Ross Cullen reports.
The torrential rain that dampened the Olympics opening ceremony on Friday and the first day of competition on Saturday is still having an impact now. The water quality in the River Seine is not fit for competition. The triathlon events are due to take place on the 30th and 31st of July, with reserve days later on this week, and the triathlon could still become a duathlon, with only running and cycling if the organisers cannot ensure the safety of the water for the swimming leg. Ross Cullen, Paris.
And the main news again. 2 children are dead and 9 have been injured in a UK stabbing incident. A 17-year-old suspect is in police custody. The UN has condemned a rocket attack that killed 12 people, including children, on a football field in the occupied Golan Heights over the weekend that risks escalation between Israel and Hezbollah. And the son of the crime boss El Chapo is due in US court on drug charges. He helped US authorities get some suspects on planes to face trial. And that's the latest from Feature Story News. Caroline Malone reporting.
From the admission of Ant Colony 000082567 KLN 00067X into the Union in 1897, to the day in 1817 when embarrassed construction workers realized they put the Erie Canal in the wrong place. The Onion looks back at This Week in History. On August 5th, 1962, Nelson Mandela was jailed until 1990, becoming fully rehabilitated through the South African penal system. And thanks to the services provided to him while imprisoned, emerged from jail a successful politician and internationally revered symbol of peace. Mandela's record of overcoming hardships and moving South Africa beyond its formidable racial struggles is a lasting testament to South Africa's correctional facilities and prove that the penal system's small cells, demeaning work duties, and minimal rations are exactly the tools needed for a prisoner to truly become a reformed citizen.
This is the Onion News Network.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. 603-283-6160 if you want to join the show. That's 603-283-6160. With you in the studio tonight, it's Aria.
And Mr. Penguin.
And we've launched the new podcast. We launched it on June the 1st, actually. And then there was a bit like a 2-week delay where there wasn't a new episode after number 2. But we since worked that out, and it's been chugging along like clockwork ever since, releasing every Friday at freetalkcast.com. Last week's episode featured me and Bonnie, where I told the story about the government messing with me. That's not the words I used in the podcast, because the podcast is not FCC friendly. But they are messing with me with my name change and giving me... They went into my document, my name change record, and they changed the state from Mississippi to Michigan. And it was spelled out in both cases. Not like they used MS and thought for some reason that represented Michigan. No, they took the word Mississippi and they replaced it with the word Michigan. And they did this at some point in the last 60 days. And there's no explanation for this except that they're messing with me, because there's no reason to go back in and edit those documents in the first place. You can find out more of that by listening to the latest episode of freetalkcast.com. Again, that is freetalkcast.com. We also talked about the Trump assassination and just the amount of hatred that is rampant in the world right now, to the extent that people are actually wishing that someone had been murdered. And that, to me, is crazy. That's how you know you're broken as a human being. If you can watch someone get shot at, whether you think it's fake or not, I don't really care. But you can watch someone get shot at, and your first thought is, oh man, why did he miss? You're broken as a human being. And you need more love in your life. And you need to get away from that hatred. You need to turn off your television, get off of Facebook, get off of Twitter, get off of social media in general, and start interacting with your neighbors and actually living in love and peace, instead of living in such hatred that you wish other human beings were being murdered on television. Like, what's wrong with you people? Stop being like this. So you can find that at freetalkcast.com. Check that out, freetalkcast.com. It's also on SoundCloud, Spotify, all of that stuff. You can just search for Free Talk Live or Free Talk Cast. Any of that will take you to it. Now, Chris, you and I have talked frequently about the war on pornography being waged in various states. I think the first time we talked about it, this was actually on Call to Freedom, which has since been retired. It was a radio show that we used to do.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
And it was a state, probably Oklahoma. It was a Mormon state. So it may have been Utah, attempting to impose some sort of porn ban within their state. And now, more recently, the European Union, or a country within the European Union.
I don't know if I should say the left or the Christians or whoever they've obviously,
Christians hate sex.
Yes, they absolutely do. And It's been an ongoing thing, and it comes back in like decades, like every so many decades it becomes an issue again. And I remember this is from the 90s, and they passed, I don't even remember exactly what the specific pieces of legislation were, but like Online Child Protection Act maybe was one of them. Anyway, but they keep trying to pass these laws, these censorship laws, and this wouldn't be the first time, but it's back again. And it's interesting this time because they did pass some of these in like a lot of countries, actually, like actual censorship, ISP, like actually in other countries censor pornographic websites, or maybe it's child pornography websites. Either way, but they have these actual censorship lists in place, and they also have in many countries they actually have like political websites on them even. And they were talking about in Canada here, probably within the last couple of years, of adding gambling websites to these lists. Other websites that are very common on these lists now are also piracy websites. So
I found out today, for reasons unrelated to my install of Windows earlier, that Windscribe is a VPN that I love, and they have a node at MIT that blocks all Pirate Bay and torrenting traffic. And that's very frustrating because it's the closest and most effective node to where I'm located. And like, why, guys? Why are you doing this to me? I've got to connect to Atlanta, Georgia now? Really? Anyway.
Well, and the weird thing about that is too, like you could even have a node exiting from MIT, but the traffic could be redirected to another node for like if they're blocking torrents, for example. It could just redirect all torrent traffic to
that's a really
node,
good
right?
point.
So you don't even have to actually connect to like multiple nodes or have some sort of complicated setup with yours. And you would still get the best of both worlds, right?
Well, Windscribe is really simple like that. It's got a really nice UI, and you can just click locations and you can connect to different locations throughout the world. So if you want to watch something in Netflix, this is not an ad, but if you want to watch something on Netflix or whatever that's region locked, I would recommend Windscribe because they are very privacy friendly. In fact, if you find them on Facebook, their Facebook page just says something like, if you're looking at this, you don't take privacy seriously enough.
That's great.
Yeah. And they have a really good sense of humor. Apparently they did a post a few years ago while I was maybe not a few years ago, while I was in prison, that people took as them being communists, and they got, people got really upset about that. And it was a comedy post that they had to go back and say, hey guys, we were joking. We're not communists, but thanks for showing your support, I guess. So really good sense of humor. And, they do accept cryptocurrency as payment as well.
Cool. So I got a story here from humorously enough, it's also from the BBC. I don't know what is with the UK.
Do they know? Do they know?
It's
while they're railing against porn and talking, do they know about BBC?
What?
Nothing. Move on with the article. That's
okay.
Never mind. That's all. That's all I'm willing to say on radio.
Okay.
It does not only stand for British Broadcasting Corporation.
Yes, I'm. I was wondering if that's where you're going with that.
And I'm just the irony, as you mentioned, humorously indeed, that BBC.com is discussing this.
Yes, it is BBC.com. Oh wow. Oh my gosh, this is really hilarious.
Yes.
You know what? I was thinking British Broadcasting Corporation.
That's
just
because,
now realizing
unlike me,
this.
You are not a debauched pervert.
Yes, clearly. So yeah, how the American war on porn could change the way you use the internet is the title of this
There's
story.
an American war on porn now.
Yeah.
I mean, I said poor now because there is kind of an American war on the poor as well.
Oh, okay.
But I meant to say porn now.
Okay. Yeah. So here's the thing. So there's definitely been a war out of like the United Kingdom on porn.
Yeah.
And it's
were they the
also,
ones who did like the porn pass where you could watch? You had like 30 tokens for your allotted monthly.
I want to say yes. I believe that was the UK. Now
I ran out of porn credits. I need more.
It was absolutely crazy proposal. Now the thing is, I think they already had implemented something like that. Or not that specifically, but like some sort of censorship for porn where when you get the internet connection, it's like filtered by default. So you can't access porn already, I think, in the UK or something like that. So I'm not entirely sure what the porn pass, obviously the porn pass would change that a little bit, but
So it's blacklisted, and the Porn Pass would probably allow you to view the blacklisted sites.
I'm not sure. Like, well, because you can
if you have the tokens.
So the way it works, I believe,
can earn more tokens, by the way, by tweeting government-friendly things.
The way I understand it works is you can call your ISP up and have them disable it, but it's on by default, right? So the Porn Pass is a little different in that you get credits to access specific like porn sites.
As big of a degenerate as I am, the last thing I want to do
is
call my ISP and be like, excuse me, I need to watch porn.
But remember, with the Porn Pass, you can somehow go and request more credits. So if you don't
and
get
I wouldn't
enough,
want to do that either.
If the 30 credits they give you isn't enough, you can request another 30 credits.
Can you just imagine trying to watch a pornographic video and just having it pop up? You have reached your allotted pornographic viewing time this month.
Yeah,
welcome to 2024.
I mean, this is like a serious proposal. It's so ridiculous. Like, I really want to know, would anybody actually use this system as opposed to just like signing up for a VPN or using a free VPN or something, right?
I would recommend Windscribe again if we're going to VPNs. There's a number of really good VPN services out there. I wouldn't recommend one of these ones that you see advertised by YouTube streamers and stuff like that. All the time, like NordVPN and that crap. I wouldn't recommend those.
Yeah, the free VPNs you should probably generally avoid for privacy reasons. But like
Windscribe has the same features. You don't have as many servers as you can connect to, and you're limited to like 10 gigabytes a month or something.
So, that's not going to be enough.
No.
Especially if you have a porn habit. But
if you need more porn credits, chances are good that 10 gigabytes a month is not going to cover it. Excellent point. But which is cheaper in that case? Buying more porn credits or just getting the VPN? The VPN is cheaper because, one, you can use it to help maintain your privacy. And that's really hard to beat.
Yeah.
It does also work in Linux, by the way, but you have to run it from a command prompt, and it gets a little wonky.
There's another way to do this too. You don't even need to subscribe to a VPN. There's this thing called the dark web. Now, you may not want to go there for porn, but like technically, you can also use the Tor browser to access ClearNet porn sites. So you don't even really need to like pay for anything if you don't want to.
I don't know that I've ever attempted to browse a ClearNet site using a darknet browser. Now, obviously, such a thing is going to be possible, and I knew that.
Yeah,
but I don't think I've ever attempted to.
It's going to be slower than accessing, through a VPN.
Sure.
But it doesn't cost you anything. Like, this idea that like any kind of porn censorship or Porn Pass or whatever you want to call it is going to work. You're crazy. You're absolutely crazy if you think that. You must be an old fuddy-duddy or something.
Are you familiar with I2P? I just remember that this thing even came into existence.
I know of I2P and I've looked at it a little bit, but it's been a while.
Okay.
Yeah.
Never mind then.
But yeah, I mean, basically the point is that there are so many different ways for people to access porn. Like any kind of filtering you try to do it's a futile effort.
And why are you trying to do it anyway? Like if your neighbors want to watch porn or if your kids want to watch porn, why do you want to stop that?
The kids are going to be the ones the adults go to find out how to get around the porn blocks. Like seriously, does anybody really think this is going to work?
How do you tame a horse in Minecraft?
I mean, it's funny. Like I'm thinking back to like before the internet, and like there were ways of exchanging files back, pornographic content back then too. Like young people, like you don't actually need like the internet.
That's true. And I mean, really, you only. And what about DVDs? Right?
Do you remember tapes like cassette tapes?
Yeah.
Oh, no, yeah, cassette tapes. Like people would trade cassette tapes and things like that. Like they trade their porn collections. It's not like this is gonna work.
That's exactly what I was about to ask. Like you find your dad's DVD collection because for some reason your dad's a weirdo and he has a porn DVD collection still in the year 2024.
I'm thinking about the Playboy magazines, but okay, sure. Later on,
when
DVDs,
you boot up
I'm
the
sure.
DVD player, is it going to block you and say no? Watching this video is going to use up 6 porn credits for this month.
I want to know if any parents out there are even aware that these devices have like controls on them even.
And is this video or pictures only that this would apply to?
Well, it wouldn't apply to, well, this is the funny thing. So like if you have like a DVD player and you set up like a control on it for like children or whatever to prevent them from like viewing, like it's only going to work with probably commercial DVDs. So like anything that's non-commercial would still play, I presume, unless you're blocking all non-commercial videos, DVDs.
That's right, because they're usually based on rating, aren't they?
Yeah, right.
Usually we'll block like a PG-13 or
Right.
rated R, but like Lord of the G-String is not rated. I wouldn't think.
No, it's not.
But I mean, there's probably some movies out there that do get a rating, an X rating or a triple X rating. That's where those terms come from, obviously. But it's got to be a severe minority. And as you mentioned, there's nothing stopping a kid from burning a DVD with a bunch of porn videos on it and handing it to his friend.
Yeah, and that's definitely something that I remember in my teenage years going on with like the one kid that didn't have internet access in like the entire high school that I went to, probably.
Yeah, so you're right.
They just got their collection on what would have been a CDR at the time.
These people can't have any idea how technology actually works. That they think they can ban pornography, but it concerns me that anyone is even attempting to do this, because it just sort of shows how much we're regressing, despite how much progress we think we're making towards sex positivity and acceptance. Like, there's still people out there trying to restrict access to pornography. Like, it's just people having sex.
If you're
why do we care?
If you're capable, how do I say this? If you're capable of like, if you're capable of being interested in it, that you're also capable of getting around these filters. Like, so they're really stupid and pointless.
Very well said.
Yeah.
So what is the United States trying to do?
Well, yeah, so this is an interesting question. So they basically, and for those who are like, oh, you know, pornography, okay, it's okay to ban pornography. Well, the problem is they're not really just banning pornography. They're also wanting to ban social media sites as well.
And what Twitter allows pornography, doesn't it? Or at least it used to?
Anything that has user-generated content is what they're trying to restrict. So what the laws that they're talking about would do would require you to submit a government ID in order to access any kind of user-generated content website. So like looking at a dictionary or an encyclopedia would now require a government ID.
So like Wikipedia, Encyclopedia Dramatica, if you can find it. It is still out there, by the way. It's super hard to find, but you can still find it. Or Twitter or Facebook.
Twitter, Facebook.
Mastodon. Well, Mastodon wouldn't apply, would it?
Because
it's not a website.
There may be some exceptions here in this, but I'm not even sure. I don't think it necessarily applies as to whether it's a website or not. So I'm not even entirely sure that like, but the question is, how would you enforce it, right? Like this is another problem.
I imagine there are some Mastodon admins out there who would be willing to enforce this.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely.
But like, you can't make them. We have a Mastodon server. I will shut the thing down before I require people to submit their IDs.
I believe there's 5,000 nodes, 5 or 8,000 nodes, something like that, Mastodon nodes that you can sign up with. Any one of them. So if you go to the UK and the Mastodon server is in the UK and somebody's administering it from the UK where these laws apply, and it requires a government ID, click the back button, click another node. This isn't really that complicated.
Yeah. And chances are good it will be federated with this node that you were trying to join in the first place.
It absolutely will be federated because
otherwise it wouldn't even be listed there at Mastodon's main website.
Well, right, because it wouldn't be Mastodon. It's the protocol, the way the protocol works. And the funny thing is that government doesn't actually like say, oh, you can't federate with other nodes. It's just the users that have to be ID'd, basically. So you would absolutely, if you absolutely would get all the content from that UK node on another node and vice versa. It wouldn't actually, it's really, really pointless. Like, this is just such a futile and dumb law.
Well, the government is always
set of
behind.
laws that they're being proposed here.
The government is always behind technology. They're still trying to regulate Bitcoin and figure out how Bitcoin works. And like the crypto world, the crypto enthusiast world is, in Monero and other more advanced cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
Like NFTs rose and fell, before the federal government figured out Bitcoin.
Let me, and this is the funny thing. Let me just read.
Free Talk Live, by the way, I'm proud to say everyone on this show was hard set against NFTs from the moment we first heard about it. And every time we talked about it after that, we talked about what a terrible idea it was and how stupid it was and how a lot of people were going to lose their money. And look at that.
Yep.
We were right. We also never came out in support of FTX. We never used FTX. We never said anything good about them.
We were like telling people to get off of exchanges and stop using them.
We were indeed. And certainly don't put your Bitcoin on an exchange.
Or centralized exchanges at least. Yeah. Yeah, the whole thing is just crazy. So one of the things, this is one of the reactions to this was from Wikipedia and like what their plans were. So Wikipedia recently said it will refuse to comply with the UK's age verification rules because it would violate our commitment to collect minimal data about readers and contributors.
Wikipedia said this?
No, this is Wikipedia, right? Okay. Coming out of Wikipedia.
They tend to be pretty pro freedom anyway. I don't remember the guy's name. But he's all right.
Yeah, he's not bad. Definitely not.
He's not good, but he's not bad. And you can support Wikipedia
on this front
with cryptocurrency and some other stuff. So like what is his name?
I can't think of the guy's name. I just remember
I know his name, but I cannot think of it.
I believe he got started in the porn business actually.
Really?
I believe that is his history, if I recall correctly. Although I don't know what site he was involved with, or
Jimmy Wells. That was it.
Yeah. What does it tell us? What website?
He does not look like the kind of person who was ever involved with pornography, but like, maybe when he was younger, he could have been.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I know that the pornographic websites, like the ones that everybody knows of, are like concentrated in the hands of a few. So it's sort of like everything else on the internet nowadays. It's like there's just a couple people who own it. Now don't get me wrong, there's other pornographic websites out there that are not controlled by the three, but the big ones, right? The really big ones. It would be like Facebook. The equivalent of Facebook for porn is owned by and a couple other ones that are like large in size, like Facebook, which I guess would be like MySpace. It would be like Facebook and MySpace, all being owned by like a couple of people, basically.
Let's talk about how ridiculous Elon Musk is for a second, because he owned X.com and he just sat on it for years and years, and he never once made a porn site there. Like, how bad of a businessman do you have to be to own X.com and not have porn there? You've got to be a bad businessman. That's all there is to it. That's like owning, it could only be worse if he owned XXX.com and never put porn there. But like, if ever there was supposed to be a website that had porn on it, it's X.com. And I think Twitter, I'm going to always call it Twitter because Elon Musk dead names his dead child. So I'm going to dead name his platform. So Twitter, I think, still allows porn, but I know there was an issue around it a year or so ago. But it was right around the time that I was going to prison. I have not followed up about it since because I really don't care.
I did not know Twitter allows porn.
It does indeed.
That just boggles my mind.
It may not still, but it at least used to.
Yeah. And especially with like the laws that have been passed over the years. I don't know if people are aware of this, but like if you operate I'm trying to think how to phrase this, a user-generated content website like Craigslist, and people post ads for sex, you're basically guilty of like serious sex crimes.
I have an update. It is true.
In the U.S.
With Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, their guidelines have been updated to reflect the new policy that will allow users to, quote, share consensually produced and distributed adult nudity or sexual behavior. So
interesting.
And I thought that was the case a few years ago. This is from June the 3rd of this year, by the way. So as of right now, or at least,
and this is weird too, because PayPal doesn't allow pornographic
well, they cut off
OnlyFans
workers. I don't know about.
Yeah. Let's see. So I'm trying to think who's the link between PayPal and Twitter or X.com. I guess it was between Twitter.
That would definitely be Elon Musk.
Elon Musk. Okay.
Yeah, because people say he created PayPal. He didn't. Like, he just bought it. Just like he did Twitter and SpaceX and all these other things that he didn't actually
I don't know when they I mean, I know they banned like porn sites like back in the 90s.
They did.
But
they did it more recently as well. I remember OnlyFans being the ban there being a thing. I think Visa also banned OnlyFans.
They did. Yeah.
Just a mess.
Yeah, a bunch of porn sites. Yeah.
A lot of censorship out there.
Yeah, especially user-generated porn.
More about this war on porn and war on your right to earn money doing what you think is best. It's Free Talk Live.
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. Tired of the ever-inflating US dollar? You can live your life on Dash instead with some handy websites. BitRefill.com has been accepting Dash for years and has a ton of big-name retailers and brands including grocers, gas stations, phone refills, Amazon, and even prepaid MasterCards. Plus, many of their gift cards are available at a discount. But what about paying your bills? Spritz.finance can do that, and they can send dollars to your bank account in case you still need those for some reason. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol, and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at dash.org. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit dash.org to learn about Dash. Dash.org.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone. 2 children have been killed and 9 other children injured in a stabbing attack in Southport, United Kingdom. A 17-year-old suspect is in police custody, but his motive has not been made public. Stuart Smith reports.
Parents speaking to local media in Merseyside have told of the cries of traumatised children as a man went on an attacking spree in a coastal town north of Liverpool. The local children's hospital has declared a major incident. The police say 1 arrest has been made and there is no wider risk to the public. The man's intentions and motivations have not been reported. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has called the incident horrendous and deeply shocking. Stuart Smith, London.
The son of jailed Mexican crime boss El Chapo is due in a Chicago court this week after surrendering to US authorities. It's reported he may have been working with officials on his surrender and fooled another drug trafficker to come with him. Mitch McCann reports.
Joaquin Guzman Lopez arrived at an airfield last week in New Mexico, where he was met by US officials who took him into custody. Alongside Lopez was Ismael Almayo Zambara Garcia, who it's reported was fooled into making the journey with Lopez, who was in on the scheme. Almayo is a well-known Mexican crime boss who founded the infamous Sinaloa cartel with the father of Lopez, El Chapo, who is serving a life sentence in a US prison. Almayo pleaded not guilty to drugs charges, including continuing criminal enterprise, narcotics importation and money laundering a short time after his arrest. His lawyer has told US media he was not in the country voluntarily and that he was forcibly kidnapped. Meanwhile, Lopez, who has been indicted on drugs charges, is expected to appear in a Chicago court later this week. Mitch McCann, New York.
UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres and other UN officials have condemned Saturday's rocket attack on a football field in the occupied Golan Heights. At least 12 people were killed, mainly children and teenagers, and fears are mounting of a full-blown conflict amid the latest attack between Israel and Hezbollah. Jody Jacobs reports.
The Secretary-General has called for restraint, fearing escalating violence in the region. In a statement released over the weekend, Antonio Guterres said civilians and children in particular should not continue to bear the burden of the horrific violence. It went on to say that the Secretary-General is urging all parties to exercise maximum restraint and reiterates once again his consistent calls on all concerned to avoid any further escalation. Another statement released by the UN Special Coordinator for Lebanon also condemned the attack, Araldo Lazario, calling for civilians to be protected. Jody Jacobs, New York.
Olympics officials called off the triathlon event on Monday due to poor water quality in the River Seine. It's a second day of subpar water that's ruled out swimming events. If the water doesn't improve, the event could become a biathlon with just running and cycling.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live, 603-283-6160. You can weigh in, talk about the war on porn, or you can change the subject, talk about whatever is important to you. That's 603-283-6160. I want to tell you about LibertyMinded.com. It's the best place to go for Liberty swag. And if you want Free Talk Live stuff, then LibertyMinded.com is the place to go. You can find hoodies, t-shirts, bumper stickers, all of that great stuff right there on the site, plus a number of other liberty-oriented stickers and t-shirts and other stuff. So check it out, libertyminded.com. The same person behind the website is designing the wrap for our mobile studio. I'm really looking forward to getting that thing wrapped because it's going to look so awesome at PorcFest and other festivals. Once we get it wrapped and we're doing the show in there and we've got the large actual monitors. By monitors in this context, I mean speakers, not computer monitors, sitting outside broadcasting. It's going to be glorious next year at PorcFest, the Free Talk Live presence. But that's next year. First, we got to get it wrapped, and the guy at libertyminded.com is taking care of that for us. So show your love and support to him or her, as the case may be. I only say that because I know the person doing it is going to get a kick out of that. libertyminded.com. Check it out. Awesome stuff there. And that's actually where I bought my Free Talk Live hoodie. And I learned after the fact that I could have just gone into the basement here and grabbed one. But instead, I ended up buying it from libertyminded.com. So that was smart of me. But, you know, whatever. I supported the thing and supported the show. I did the thing as one is supposed to do. And then my dog chewed holes in the pockets because I kept treats in the pockets. And so now I just got this hoodie with pocket holes, I guess, everywhere. And I never wear it any longer because of the holes in the pocket.
Well, you know where to get another one.
I do, in fact, know where to get another one. libertyminded.com. Check it out and show your support. So we're talking about the war on pornography here that continues unabated. There's no real pushback, as far as I can tell, against this war on pornography because, like, where's the pro-porn crowd? I realize it's embarrassing to call yourself pro-pornography, right? Where
are the sane people is what I want to know.
That's
like,
a fair point.
Where's my politician that's not insane that I get to vote for? Because I haven't encountered him yet.
At PorcFest this last year, just a month ago, there was a person, when I was judging the rant competition, who ranted against pornography and how it was destroying society and destroying men and families and all this other stuff. And, she made some good points. But my opinion is that everything's fine in moderation. Maybe not everything is fine in moderation, but most things are fine in moderation. And porn is certainly one of those things. So it's not porn that's the problem any more than cocaine is a problem. It's people using to excess. That is the problem.
Honestly, I think it's more of a social attitude towards it that's the problem. I mean, if you really think about it.
I don't really disagree,
like,
but I didn't want to get into a debate with her on the stage because that's not really what we do.
I think what's messed up is as a society, there's people in society who shame people for sex or, porn or whatever. And that's where the problem is, right? Yeah. It's not the porn. That's just like normal, healthy adult kind of activity. Sex, same thing. It's normal, healthy adult activities.
I agree entirely, man.
This is where
love
babies come from.
And I love sex. So
this is how we end up with a society that continues to exist. If we say that's bad and we shame women for it, like, we have no more society.
Yeah, excellent point. I would much rather have a freer society where people are more free and open and honest with one another about their desires, because, like, these upset conservatives, they act like they've never had sex or they somehow hate sex. No, look, man, I'm sorry. Your pastor loves sex just as much as I do. At best, he lies to himself about it. But this idea that he's somehow having sex and not enjoying it, or he would watch pornography and not enjoy it, maybe, but that's because he's got a whole lot of mental blocks in the way that religion put there. But if you didn't have that religion there and you just showed a person pornography, they're gonna enjoy it.
I don't even think it's religion. It's like specific religions or specific conservative sects of religions.
It's very much a Puritan Christian kind of thing.
Definitely. Like, I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know. It just seems so crazy. And like, to look at like different, like, there are such extremes too, like out there. Like, if you look at the Middle East, if you look at American kind of Puritanism, and then you compare it to, like, I don't know, like maybe mainland Europe or something like that, or Eastern Europe. Like, it's so very different.
Yeah, because they went through their phase of open Christian antagonism toward everything and everyone, where people were being burned America sort of had people being burned at the stake too for witchcraft, but nothing to the degree of the Spanish Inquisition or the many, many wars fought in the Great Britain, England, whatever you want to call it, throughout its history as a result of Christianity and Catholicism and the rise of Protestantism and the need for separation of church and state. That whole thing happened over there. It didn't really happen over here. So Americans, I think they don't really understand the importance and the value of not allowing your government to use their religious motivations to ban pornography across the board, because we didn't learn the lesson that the United Kingdom did, that leads to bad things. That leads to people being burned at the stake and tortured for heresy and other nonsense, or being put in prison for violating this law against pornography. Because if there's a law against it, someone can go to jail for it. And then you have a grown adult going to jail for watching pornography in the comfort of their home.
I just want to re-emphasize these people are not just talking about porn. They're talking about government IDs for any website that has user-generated content, guys. I mean, this is how far extreme these people are who are advocating for these or advocating these anti-porn positions. These are not like even like the moderate Christians. We're talking about the extreme like Christian religious conservatives.
And they are the loudest.
They really are. They really are. These are the same people actually in this article. So this is a really long article, so I'm not going to read the whole thing or even a very small portion of it really. But they're the same ones that were or some of the groups that are pushing this actually are the ones that were pushing anti-LGBT or LGBTQ kind of propaganda of a decade ago.
Yeah.
Or two ago.
Yeah, they hate everything and everyone that isn't a conservative Christian. And maybe hate isn't quite the wrong word, but they want to repress and minimize the existences of everyone who isn't a straight Christian, a conservative straight Christian. That's certainly the case because these are the same people who were upset a few years ago about drag queens. It's the same people who are upset right now about the Olympics and the Last Supper thing.
Yep.
They're always upset about something.
So there is a part of the story I do want to read. So I quoted, I did one quote for one portion, and I'm going to quote another portion of the story I'm going to read. It's not long, but here it is. So I just think this is hilarious. Somebody's suggesting this. So could there be a way to both protect privacy and children? There's another solution that many opponents of age verification prefer. Opponents. I want to be clear about this. Opponents of age verification prefer. I just think this. I want to know who opposes age verification and prefers this as a solution. A system known as device-based age verification. So
your device knows that you're 16 and not allowed to view porn, and it stops you?
I'm guessing that like this, what they're suggesting here, it sounds like, is that when you go to buy your computer, you go to show your ID, and then they press some button and they say this is owned by an adult, and so you can now access porn, and they get all your information, the driver's license and social security number and all that, and somehow then like you can access pornographic websites as opposed to having to give each individual website a government issued ID.
That's a very minor difference.
I think it's a very serious, disturbing difference in that now everybody knows who you are, right? Like I could go and purchase a computer anonymously and communicate, I don't know, some sort of like government change. But if I'm now identified, right? How do you do that? Because now the government knows exactly who to go after, who to prosecute, who to punish for advocating for change.
Really good point.
Let me continue here.
There are better solutions, like just stop caring. And that sounds awful. But like I just cannot wrap my head around the kind of person who cares that their 13-year-old child is watching porn. What is it hurting? What difference does it make? Why do you care? If you're one of these people, please call and let me know, because like I literally cannot wrap my mind around it. 603-283-6160. To me, it's inconsequential.
I'm still trying to figure out how a young person of any age is going to be hurt by porn or nudity or any of these things. Like it's just like, and it's crazy because like there's beaches all over the world where kids and adults prance about freely having fun, not necessarily sexual, but
right. There's
They're
nudist
not
beaches.
harmed.
No.
How is it that only kids in the Middle East get harmed by seeing women without like full veils, right?
Well, that's it. It's social conditioning, without a doubt.
Right. It's a societal issue. It has nothing to do, like, porn doesn't hurt you. Sex doesn't hurt you. You know, seeing somebody naked doesn't hurt you. This is not going to hurt you.
And in fact, the more pornography and the more naked people you see, the less possible it is for any one of those things to hurt you. I understand maybe some 7-year-old kid is going to be, quote, traumatized the first time they see a nude man at Walmart. You know, if they've been conditioned to think that nudity is shameful and should be covered up the first time they see a nude man at Walmart.
But the problem is the parent or the people around them
I don't disagree.
instilling that shame in them.
That's
not
exactly my point,
the guy running around Walmart naked. Like, I mean, look.
But the more they encounter that, the less it's going to affect them.
Only concern with a guy running around Walmart naked in Keene would be he's probably crazy, and like I'd be a little bit concerned about that. But I wouldn't be concerned about him running around naked, like not that in and of itself.
But if there were a bunch of people naked running around, it would mean absolutely nothing to me. It would not hurt anyone.
Right, exactly. If more people were doing it, like I wouldn't be concerned that he's crazy, right? I'd just be like, oh yeah, that's another naked guy. Right?
Yeah, and we wouldn't bat an eye about it. Just like it's becoming more and more common to see a trans person and just keep going on with your day. So, oh, there's a trans person. Becoming more and more common. Nudity should be more and more common. I'm not a nudist, but I fully understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, same thing. Like I've never been involved in porn. I don't run around naked. Like I don't go to nude beaches. Like I mean I don't avoid nude beaches or anything like that either. I'm not a prude or anything like that.
I don't go to the beach.
That's what I mean. Like I don't really go to the beach either. So
if I was going to go to the beach though, and I had the option to choose between a nude beach and a non-nude beach, I think I would choose the nude beach.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. And it's completely political. It's completely philosophical. Has nothing to do with like, yeah.
Yeah. So these people are always upset is the point. And they're constantly feeling persecuted. And somehow the existence of porn, presumably, is an attack on their religious beliefs. Or their right to raise a family as they want. Like, look, if you're one of these conservative Christians and you don't want your kid watching pornography, keep them off the internet.
Head to Alabama.
Don't give them a cell phone.
Go south. Yeah, I really, yeah, it's
You're giving them a cell phone and then telling them not to use it for the one thing it's designed to do, which is watch cat videos and pornography. Like the moment the internet was invented, first there was the cat video.
Yeah, I don't know if I go that far, but
there was the pornography.
But it definitely is something that is commonly used for pornography. That's for sure. I think there's no denying that, and it's commonly used for just about anything and everything else as well at this point. But yeah, no, I mean, like yeah, like this is just one of these things where it's like. If you are so concerned about this, there is this thing called parental responsibility. You don't have to force your views on anybody else, well, other than your kid, I guess. Unfortunately, I think in my opinion, but you don't have to force your views on anybody else. Just don't give your kid a phone. You know, I mean, and I think that kind of gets messed up when you're talking about a 13-year-old at that point, but. At least if you're concerned about your 7-year-old looking at porn or something like that, which they're not going to do on their own anyway because they're just not interested in it.
Right, they're 7.
Right.
We don't have to go out of our way to protect 7-year-olds from porn because they don't care about it.
Right.
They care about Roblox.
If you are that concerned, if you're that paranoid, don't give your 7-year-old phone. I mean, it's really not that hard. I don't know many 7-year-olds that are going and buying their own phone. I mean, the law does a pretty good job of preventing them from working and going out and making money and all that. So, the law is already on your side here.
Yeah, but that's not enough for these people. They're motivated by the desire to control what other people can and can't do. It's not enough for them to keep their kids from watching pornography, which they may or may not even successfully do. They don't want anyone's kids to be able to watch pornography. And if my kid can't watch porn because you think Jesus died for your sins, you're a bad person.
Yeah, I don't even like the choice of words we're using here because like when I think of kid, I mean, let's be honest, like that's somebody under 13, not a 13.
I don't care what age. I mean, I don't care what age the person is.
I know. I just think it's like, I think they manipulate, especially the conservatives manipulate like the words that we're using here.
Yeah, because a 17-year-old also cannot watch porn according to the law.
There's places
that's completely stupid.
There's places where it's 21. I believe in Japan it's 21 actually, which is really weird because they have a really backward like from Western culture perspective on sex and nudity, and like they're not. I believe like nudity is not an issue at all in Japan, which is very weird considering that they like. I think they censor porn in Japan, if I recall correctly. So like the only legal porn is like censored porn. Like where
from what I've seen, you're correct.
Okay. Yeah. so Ari is clearly the expert on this one.
No, I'm not an expert on Japanese porn.
Oh, okay. Okay. Fair enough.
But I watched a lot of porn, and some of it was Japanese porn, and I do remember some censorship in the videos.
Yeah. I don't have a good understanding of like the culture or like what's acceptable and what's not acceptable.
I don't either. I don't even understand the United States culture and what is acceptable here.
Yeah. I got you.
Because I'm like, man, let your 10-year-old watch porn if they want. And apparently people seem to disagree with that. And I don't know why. Okay, you don't want your 10-year-old watching porn, fine. You know, it's your 10-year-old. I disagree with that because I don't think you can own another human being, including your children.
I think that's kind of the problem that we have as libertarians looking at. Like, we're looking at it from a very libertarian perspective. Like
an extremely advanced libertarian perspective.
Very advanced libertarian
many
perspective.
Steps removed from the average person.
Absolutely, 100%. But like, we're looking at it, I think, from a control perspective. Like, I don't own you. Like, you might be my child, but you're not really my, like,
I can give you some advice.
Right. Like the way I would parent is by leading by example.
Right. Again, worth noting, neither Chris nor I have any children.
This is true. This is very true.
And but are probably never going to have any children.
Having observed the good parent and looked at the bad parent, the good parent leads by example.
I do know some really good parents who have relatively young children. Some of them are older. I know one who's got like a 19, 20-year-old kid, and they're just genuinely good parents who lead by example and lead with love and tolerance and an open communication line instead of posting anti-LGBT stuff on Twitter and making it impossible for your kid to come out to you as trans or gay. Right.
Yeah, I have yet to understand how that somehow would make you a good parent. Like, that's the opposite of like what I would think a good parent would be, right? Like, you ultimately are not, whether or not, like, and this is the crazy thing, like, your choices as a parent probably aren't really going to have, I don't think, the impact that you would like probably anyway. Like your kid's probably going to have views, whether or not you're a strict parent or not a strict parent, or it's probably not going to have any effect on their views. It's probably going to, they're probably going to develop their own views. Maybe they'll affect their views and that they'll think you're crazy and you may be crazy. But like, I don't think it's I don't think like, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, you can have a libertarian child from a conservative parent. And vice versa. I mean, you can have libertarian parents and a conservative, like a kid that's more conservative.
My parents were super conservative, right? I'm from Mississippi, the Bible Belt.
Well, see, this is
conservative.
If anything, then this should be a warning to conservatives not to be conservative because you might end up with a kid like Aria.
Yeah, you don't want that. I gave my parents nothing but trouble. To be fair, they deserved every bit of that trouble that I gave them. But like, I did give them nothing but trouble. Andrew Solomon, though, talks about this in his book, Far From the Tree, which I would highly recommend to anyone out there who's curious about parenting and raising a child who may be different from yourself. And that's something that a lot of parents don't think about before they have children. They just have children. But there's a realistic possibility that the child will be different from you. The child might be disabled, might have autism, might be trans, might be gay, might be any number of things that you're not. And you're going to struggle with the issue of horizontal identities versus vertical identities, which a vertical one would be one that's inherited, one that's hereditary, versus a horizontal one, which is something that is learned. A lot of parents, when they are faced with a child that is different from themselves, they don't know the difference between a vertical identity and a horizontal one. So when they see that their child is trans, they think that their child learned this from society. Their child picked this up. They failed as a parent to protect their child from this, because they don't understand that it is, in fact, hereditary and genetic and biological, and that there's nothing they could have or could not have done as a parent that would have affected that. And that's true of autism and other things. Well, oh, if I hadn't vaccinated my child, no, I mean, scientists have actually shown which genes are like causing these things to happen. And like, if you look into it, it's actually genetic and it makes sense. And there's nothing you could have done as a parent to keep your child from being gay or autistic.
The thing is, like, even if
but they think they failed, and because of that, they react defensively.
And the thing is, like, even whether or not we even know, it's kind of, it's almost like it almost doesn't matter, because ultimately, if you look at it, it's like there's no way that, like, you're gonna change the outcome either way. Like, it's just
very true.
It's like, I mean,
you can't pray the gay away,
right? Like what kid is gonna be like, oh, I'm gay, to their conservative parents? They're not. They're just not gonna do it. They're still gay. It doesn't change the fact that they're
trans as
right?
well.
Like,
right?
like, do you think that
like the signs were there from the moment I was born?
Do you think that the child is like going to be like, I don't even know, like what
they think that being gay, being trans, and presumably being autistic as well, and
when was this ever a popular thing? Like,
they think it's a choice. They really do, and no amount of scientific evidence or argument can convince them otherwise. And because they think it's a choice, they believe that if their child makes that choice, then they failed as a parent. But it like your basic assumption that your child chose to be gay or trans is flawed. So you didn't fail as a parent. The only way in which you failed as a parent was by forcing your child to be something that child isn't. That's how you failed as a parent, by not allowing your child to communicate with you and tell you what they needed from you as their parent, and then failing to give that child what they were communicating to you they needed. That's where you failed as a parent. But because your child was born with these genitals and wants to present this way, that's not failure. It's failure to make your child cry, to make your child want to commit suicide, to make them wish they had never been born. That's where you failed as a parent. So that's today's rant, I guess.
Yeah, I'm gonna
back to the war on porn.
Yeah, I'm gonna continue with this one paragraph I haven't even finished reading. we don't even get through half a paragraph. Okay, so essentially, lawmakers could make technology companies build age verification feature into operating systems on smartphones and computers. So literally, what I was saying, like, you have to show the seller an ID, a government ID, and then they register that with the computer somehow.
Now, is this process going to be automatic? Because I remember how this worked with the COVID-19 passports, which was an app that you could install or something in, like, the state of New York, where you could just show them your QR code or your proof that you had been vaccinated, and an app verified your vaccine card.
This is, I think, an idea by people and a proposal by people who don't understand technology.
Yeah, because you could use a menu in New York to pass it off as a vaccine card. A restaurant menu, submit that as your vaccine card, and it would approve you as being vaccinated, because the technology is not there to do the things that these people think it can do. And that's, as you point out, because they don't understand the technology that's actually going on here.
Yeah. I mean, this is just...
They're probably thinking artificial intelligence can evaluate this driver's license or this government ID and can tell us whether or not the person is of age, which varies from one state to the next.
I don't know. I don't know how they would propose implementing this as a solution and it being privacy friendly. The fact that they think that somebody thinks that this is somehow a solution to the privacy problem just, like, blows my mind. Like,
the solution to the privacy problem is to let people have the privacy to use their devices as they want.
Yeah.
That's the solution and to not care how other people are using their devices. I don't care if Chris goes home tonight and uses his phone or his laptop to watch porn. I don't care. He's got full privacy from me in that regard. That's the solution. Stop caring what other people do. 603-283-6160. There's more coming up here. More about this war on porn and Americans turning away from McDonald's. It is Free Talk Live.
A dead iPod is remembered as expensive. It's the Onion Radio News. This is Doyle Redland reporting. Despite heroic efforts at resuscitation, a third-generation 30-gigabyte iPod, serial number AP356372, was pronounced dead early this morning at the age of 2. The iPod's closest companion, Sarah Zartman, says she'll never forget the great music it used to play, nor will she forget the nearly $500 price tag.
I'll remember those 3,500 songs as long as I live. That iPod was convenient, portable, and really pricey.
Zartman added that had she known the iPod's lithium-ion battery would have such a short lifespan, she might have spent more time listening to it. AP 356372 is survived by a BlackBerry. Doyle Redland for The Onion Radio News, online at theonion.com.
This is the Onion News Network.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone. 2 children have been killed and 9 other children injured in a stabbing attack in Southport, United Kingdom. A 17-year-old suspect is in police custody, but his motive has not been made public. Stuart Smith reports.
Parents speaking to local media in Merseyside have told of the cries of traumatised children as a man went on an attacking spree in a coastal town north of Liverpool. The local children's hospital has declared a major incident. The police say 1 arrest has been made and there is no wider risk to the public. The man's intentions and motivations have not been reported. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has called the incident horrendous and deeply shocking. Stuart Smith, London.
The son of jailed Mexican crime boss El Chapo is due in a Chicago court this week after surrendering to US authorities. It's reported he may have been working with officials on his surrender and fooled another drug trafficker to come with him. Mitch McCann reports.
Joaquin Guzman Lopez arrived at an airfield last week in New Mexico, where he was met by US officials who took him into custody. Alongside Lopez was Ismael Almayo Zambara Garcia, who it's reported was fooled into making the journey with Lopez, who was in on the scheme. Almayo is a well-known Mexican crime boss who founded the infamous Sinaloa cartel with the father of Lopez, El Chapo, who is serving a life sentence in a US prison. Almayo pleaded not guilty to drugs charges, including continuing criminal enterprise, narcotics importation and money laundering a short time after his arrest. His lawyer has told US media he was not in the country voluntarily and that he was forcibly kidnapped. Meanwhile, Lopez, who has been indicted on drugs charges, is expected to appear in a Chicago court later this week. Mitch McCann, New York.
UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres and other UN officials have condemned Saturday's rocket attack on a football field in the occupied Golan Heights. At least 12 people were killed, mainly children and teenagers, and fears are mounting of a full-blown conflict amid the latest attack between Israel and Hezbollah. Jody Jacobs reports.
The Secretary-General has called for restraint, fearing escalating violence in the region. In a statement released over the weekend, Antonio Guterres said civilians and children in particular should not continue to bear the burden of the horrific violence. It went on to say that the Secretary-General is urging all parties to exercise maximum restraint and reiterates once again his consistent calls on all concerned to avoid any further escalation. Another statement released by the UN Special Coordinator for Lebanon also condemned the attack, Araldo Lazario, calling for civilians to be protected. Jody Jacobs, New York.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni says China can work with Western countries to guarantee stability, peace and free trade. Meloni met Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing on Monday in a bid to shore up trade relations after pulling her country out of China's Belt and Road Initiative last year. Our Italy correspondent Giles Gibson reports.
This is Giorgia Meloni's first official trip to China since taking office in late 2022, and also since her decision to ditch the BRI, China's global development strategy. On Sunday, Meloni signed a 3-year plan to deepen economic cooperation with China, both sides keen to show that Italy's exit from the BRI will not define their trade relationship going forward. However, trade relations between China and the EU are still very strained. This year, Brussels has placed tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, and it's also investigating state subsidies for solar panel manufacturers. Giles Gibson, Rome.
Olympics officials called off the triathlon event on Monday due to poor water quality in the River Seine. It's a second day of subpar water that's ruled out swimming events. Ross Cullen reports.
The torrential rain that dampened the Olympics opening ceremony on Friday and the first day of competition on Saturday is still having an impact now. The water quality in the River Seine is not fit for competition. The triathlon events are due to take place on the 30th and 31st of July, with reserve days later on this week, and the triathlon could still become a duathlon, with only running and cycling if the organisers cannot ensure the safety of the water for the swimming leg. Ross Cullen, Paris.
And the main news again. 2 children are dead and 9 have been injured in a UK stabbing incident. A 17-year-old suspect is in police custody. The UN has condemned a rocket attack that killed 12 people, including children, on a football field in the occupied Golan Heights over the weekend that risks escalation between Israel and Hezbollah. And the son of the crime boss El Chapo is due in US court on drug charges. He helped US authorities get some suspects on planes to face trial. And that's the latest from Feature Story News. Caroline Malone reporting.
A dying Chevron executive is excited to one day become oil. A man wearing red glasses and pink pants is probably Dutch or something, and the report of a popular fish's death is starting to get around the tank.
This is the Onion Week in Review. The nation was once again wowed this week by the feats of very strong little boy Michael Sartinsky, who, after removing his t-shirt to better display his impressive physique, deadlifted an entire frozen turkey over his head and held it aloft for 3 full seconds. The latest demonstration of the pint-sized muscle man's almost inhuman abilities comes on the heels of multiple accomplishments involving incredible displays of speed, strength, and endurance. Over the past 4 months alone, Sartinsky cleared the 3-foot chasm between his brother's bed and his own, beat his fully grown Uncle Scott in a foot race, and threw a tennis ball clear onto the roof of his 2-story house.
Pound for pound, I honestly don't think there's a stronger boy on earth. Have you felt his muscles? They're like solid rocks.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live, and you are invited to join us, take control of the airwaves, and talk about whatever is important to you. 603-283-6160 if you would like to do that. Again, that number is 603-283-6160. And we mentioned it earlier. We don't promote it very often, and honestly, I haven't even installed Wellbird onto my phone. Wellbird is the app that I generally use in order to navigate our Mastodon server. Yes, it's our Matrix server that uses Element. The last time I tried to use Wellbird, it was to tweet something from the Free Talk Live account, and Wellbird itself just sort of crashed. And I was like, you know what? No one really cares anyway, so I'm not going to bother trying to fix this. But it still exists, and I'm still an admin there, and I still do look in on it occasionally to make sure that things are running and people... Like, there's not a lot that will kick you off the server for, but there are some things that we kind of have to kick you off the server for doing. And like whether we personally object to that or not is irrelevant. If you do something that violates the law, we will kick you off the server, because otherwise the government kicks us off the internet, and we don't particularly want that.
Whether or not we get in trouble for it, we lose servers, and that's not good.
And there's a good chance that, with them having their eyes on us to the extent that they do, if you post something illegal to our server and we're aware of it and we don't do anything about it, I'm probably going to go back to prison, and I don't want that. So, if you do something illegal, I'm going to have to ban you. Sorry. Other than that, though, you can say whatever you want and do whatever you want on our Mastodon server. Go to social.freetalklive.com if you want to join it. It's free, open source, it's decentralized, and federated. There's multiple apps that you can use. I mentioned Wellbird. That's the most Twitter-like looking one. So if you want something that's very reminiscent of Twitter, I think Wellbird would be the way to go. There's also Tusky, which is pretty popular. Check it out, social.freetalklive.com if you want to sign up for it. We don't censor you there unless you're doing something that could land us in prison, in which case, yeah, sorry, we don't really have a choice here. I'm not going to prison because you're an idiot. So I'm going to delete your stuff and ban you. Anyway, let's go to the phones. We do have a caller on the line. We have Skeeter joining us. Skeeter, you are on Free Talk Live.
Yo, it's your boy, the evolutionary capitalist. Hey, you know, liberty and especially privacy, those aren't principles of capitalism. Those are principles of modern democracy. You know that, right? There is no privacy in capitalism. There will be no privacy. All privacy will be eroded. You got that? So stop saying that it's somehow inherent to a free market or a true market.
Neither one of us have even used the word market this entire show.
You guys keep implying it. You guys keep implying like privacy is somehow inherent in human nature. It's not. It's actually an abomination of democracy. Democracy is the only system that's ever protected this foolish notion of privacy. Privacy.
Look, I don't need democracy to protect my privacy. The duty to protect.
You do.
No. The duty to protect my privacy falls on me. It doesn't fall on you or the voters or the president. It's my responsibility to protect my privacy.
Yeah, you won't be able to suppress information about you.
You really can.
You won't be able to.
It's tedious.
No, you can't.
Okay.
No, you can't.
Well, you actually can. There are ads out there, and there are VPNs, ad blockers. But beyond that, there's these extensions that you can install, and there's certain browsers you can use. And if you really, 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 really want to, you can keep your internet usage completely anonymous. But it's a giant pain to do. And there's no Facebook, there's no Twitter, there's no none of that, because the moment you use any of those sites, you lose your privacy. But if you're just trying to read websites and stuff, you absolutely can do that privately.
The funny thing is, like you're really, what you're talking about isn't even like true anonymity or privacy. You probably have to go to something like Freenet, I think it's called, for something that is more privacy friendly to the degree you're talking about.
Well, you could hijack a neighbor's Wi-Fi or something.
That's probably the worst thing to do.
Well, you could.
From a privacy perspective.
Well, certainly, but you could, and you can use, I think it's still possible. It used to be possible to spoof your MAC address. I don't know if it still is, but there are things that can be done.
Yeah.
It's just not really worth it. And whether or not...
Well, that depends on what you have to lose.
True. And whether or not privacy is a principle of the free market or something inherent in capitalism, that depends on whether or not it sells. And what we've learned is that privacy doesn't sell. Invasion of privacy is very popular and it sells very well.
I don't know. I don't think you can say that privacy doesn't sell. I think it does sell. I mean, look at the number of people using VPNs today. I mean, it's a number. It's a substantial number.
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't track that sort of stat.
I can't tell you what the number is exactly. Like, I don't know if it's not like 75% of the population, but it's probably like a third or more of the population. It's something fairly substantial.
Okay.
Yeah, like way more than you would ever think. Without looking into it, yeah, and part of that's because
there's also router level VPN services that are available. I would highly recommend those. That way, any device that you connect to your network is automatically connected to a VPN, and a little bit more secure, a little bit safer, a little bit more private.
It certainly can be, absolutely, yeah.
So what else, Skeeter?
Yeah, so you don't want a society that protects privacy. Privacy is the cause of a lot of inefficiencies and externalities. It allows people to do crime, right? And it makes all actors in the market more inefficient.
You make a good point. Hold on, Skeeter. I want to acknowledge the good point that you made.
You guys blabber
did he make a good point?
So, yeah,
I'm not
he
so
did.
sure. I he
did that. If a criminal doesn't have the privacy in which to plan their crime, then they cannot get away with it.
The problem is that
if everyone is being monitored all the time, then the moment you begin to plan a crime, they know about it.
The problem with this logic, I think, is that most people who are committing crimes that would be at least perceivable to the general public are not either they're not actually taking any steps to protect their privacy in the first place. Right?
Fair. Like the guy who was Googling the JFK assassination, or how to shoot a gun, or whatever it was before the Trump
terrorists, for example, that blew up the train in the UK years ago didn't use any encrypted communications. Like this idea that or drugs, like even buying drugs, I mean, the reason that you go on the dark web is not to protect yourself from a privacy perspective when you buy the drugs. It's actually to protect the person selling the drugs.
Yeah, because you're probably getting this stuff
otherwise they
shipped
get
to
shut
your
down, right?
house, which is a terrible idea, or to a post office box that you control or whatever. But it's got to get shipped somewhere where you're going to pick it up, and you're not going to have privacy for that.
Yeah, it's right. Exactly. It's like ultimately you're not really getting the privacy that the Tor browser or the dark web provides as a purchaser of by going onto the dark web and purchasing the drugs.
But if you're a seller, there's nothing stopping you from paying for the postage and just dropping it into a random mailbox that you pass by on the street and just keeping on walking.
Yeah, the sellers actually got some benefit. It's mostly the seller that's getting a more substantial benefit from the dark web than the buyer. So.
Anything else, Skeeter? Because you did make a good point.
No, you should really think about it. The government artificially protects privacy. The market will incentivize everybody to divulge all information about you to make society more efficient. You won't have to screen anybody. You won't have to do anything. You don't. It makes decision making more efficient when you have all information about everybody.
That's horrifying.
No, you're just not used to it because you have government artificially subsidizing the protection of privacy by giving you the right to privacy.
Is the government not the number one eroder of privacy on the globe? Because I was pretty sure until Skeeter said that.
Bigger eroder of privacy? I mean, maybe the advertising and marketing industry.
Maybe that's fair. Because Google has just as much access to your stuff, to your Gmail account, as the NSA does. Yep. So that they may be on equal terms.
Yeah.
But certainly the government is not doing us any favors not trying to protect our privacy.
Honestly, I think the biggest threat is not the corporations because you can choose not to use them. The biggest threat is the government, ultimately. So
because the NSA is going to snoop your emails. If you have Gmail or whatever, they're going to snoop your emails. And nothing is going to stop them. And I don't understand this idea that the government somehow wants to protect privacy that we just heard from Skeeter. I must be missing some brilliant understanding of the equation that only Skeeter can grasp. Because as far as I can tell, the United States government does everything it can to destroy privacy.
I think there's definitely people out there that advocate for privacy and maintaining it, or
ourselves among them.
Yeah, fighting against the anti-privacy people.
I say this as I have a Facebook and a Twitter and all of that. I know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And yet I continue to engage with them.
Yeah, so I definitely don't do what you do. But I'm also a little bit more conscientious and concerned about not so much my privacy, I guess, but just privacy in general.
To me, most of my life is an open book anyway. So I don't care about most of the stuff I'm sharing. And I don't share the stuff that I do care about, like relationship status, financial stuff, anything like that. I don't talk about to Facebook or Twitter or their audiences, or even here on the show, because it's not any of their business. And if one of my friends wants to know my relationship status, they can ask me. But I'm certainly not going to update my Facebook status about it. So the kinds of my personal life, the things that I actually care to keep private.
I'm trying to think of what I haven't already said on air, right? Like what would I want to keep private that I haven't already said, right? On air.
Right. That's the way I view it. Like pictures of me and stuff like that, like random things that may be going on with my life, like going to the Godsmack concert this last Thursday. I don't care if people know about that. Right? It doesn't matter to me if Facebook is going to use that information to advertise more rock concerts to me in the future. In fact, that could benefit me. But I do recognize that they are I'm allowing them to violate my privacy by doing it.
I think there's more of a danger in being relaxed about our privacy, at least for the majority of people. And it's probably more of a minority, or not just a single minority, but all sorts of different minorities that have something to be concerned about when it comes to losing their privacy. So from that perspective, it's like, okay, yes, I am doing by trying to preserve my privacy now, I might protect myself from a future danger, but at least at the moment, whether or not the government knows that I'm on Facebook or not isn't going to make that much of a difference.
Also, really good point, because if I don't value my privacy in all ways, like I just mentioned with the Godsmack concept, then they're going to know, well, why is Arya never talking about this? Why does Arya care so much about this that she's never talking about it on the internet? Like, we should investigate these particular things that Arya is hiding from Facebook and Twitter, right?
Yeah, another way to think of it is this. So there's this thing called GPG or PGP encryption, and it's for email. And if you only go to use encryption for your email when you actually have a need for privacy, then all of a sudden the government knows who to target.
Yeah. That's exactly it.
So it's better to use PGP or GPG once in a while when it's completely unimportant, or at least for there to be a lot of people using it, and there only be a minority of people using it for something that's, actually matters.
So let's turn back to the economy here, because I have a story here about Americans turning their back on McDonald's, which, as we mentioned, is related to the inflation that we saw increase after COVID-19.
Wait, isn't McDonald's a cheap option?
They used to be, but I don't know if you've had McDonald's lately, and I certainly haven't in like the last 2 years or so, since I started dabbling in vegetarianism and just trying to be more healthy in general. But like the dollar menu no longer exists.
Okay, it's a $5 menu right now or something like that?
Yeah, pretty much. Because
that's because of inflation.
Around 2012 or so, you could go to a McDonald's and get like 2 McDoubles for $2.
I guess
that's insane.
What I'm curious about is if McDonald's is doing bad, then what are like actual restaurants? How bad must they be doing? Because
I don't think the article says, but that's a good question. Probably not too well, I would imagine.
I would think a higher end restaurant, the higher end you are, unless you're talking about the maybe very high end. But like if you're talking about like middle class high end.
They suggest it's because McDonald's doesn't feel like you're getting very good, what's the word I'm looking for? You're not getting much bang for your buck when you go to McDonald's. Like used to, you would get 2 McDoubles and like a Dr. Pepper for $3. But now if you're going to pay that, it's going to be like $10 or $12. And according to this article, the average American is thinking if I'm going to spend $12 on a meal, I should go somewhere better than McDonald's. And I don't know what they would consider to be better than McDonald's.
I mean, wouldn't that be like an Applebee's or maybe a Chili's or something like that?
I guess so. And Applebee's has the 2 for $22 special that they're always running. Okay. So that works out to be about the same, and it's probably higher quality.
But that doesn't include a drink, and you probably are getting a drink for the $12 at McDonald's. I mean,
well, I would imagine the kind of person here could drink water and not have to pay for it.
Okay.
But yeah, the prices at McDonald's have certainly gone up. They've gone up at Applebee's and other restaurants as well, I'm sure.
I mean, I just don't feel like, I eat at McDonald's once in a while, and I also eat at Applebee's and Chili's, and I feel like the Chili's and Applebee's options are still more expensive than the McDonald's options. But
they are certainly more expensive.
Yeah.
But it's better quality food, and it feels like it's...
Sure, but both have gone up substantially over the last 4 or 5 years because of inflation. So, yeah. I mean, it's, I don't know. McDonald's is not the best food, but I also seems like it's still on the cheaper side for restaurants, at least.
Well, it's all about how it feels to the consumer, right? Because they're not rational about this. They're not sitting there thinking, oh, well, I can spend $15 at McDonald's and get this, or $15 at Applebee's and get that.
I guess I'm really curious about like what percentage of the population is actually thinking about like when they go to a restaurant, period, like, oh, about the dollars and cents, right? Like
probably a fair bit, because 60-something% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. They have to think about it.
Yeah, but the reason they live paycheck to paycheck is because they're not thinking about it. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but
it's because they're going to McDonald's and they're buying trash food, like we talked about last week.
Like you don't go to McDonald's to save money. You go to McDonald's because it's fast and convenient. I would think if you're trying to save money, you should be going to the grocery store, picking up some ingredients and making yourself some food. That's the cheap option. On that note,
I spent we mentioned it last week. I spent $130 last Monday at the grocery store. I think it may have been last Tuesday. I don't recall exactly when I did it, but I expected that to be about a week's worth of food. No, it's at least 2 weeks worth of food. I haven't even gotten through half of it yet, and it was $130. And if you're spending $12 a meal at McDonald's, you're eating significantly worse than I am, and you're not getting as many nutrients, and you're not getting as many, well, you're probably getting more calories, but you're not getting as full, certainly. But the tough environment for McDonald's, who reported losing 1% globally, but it's the first time sales have fallen since the measure of the last quarter of 2020. So they phrased that in a very weird way. Doesn't matter. Several factors were operating against McDonald's this past quarter, including a tough comparison to last year. In the same quarter a year ago, McDonald's got a 10% sales boost because of the Grimace milkshake. I don't know anything about that. Do you? I don't ever eat McDonald's, but I certainly.
Why would
I think I was in prison when this
milkshake. They have a milkshake like.
Apparently, it was a purple
like
sugar.
Now, so why would
this was
they
purple.
did a decade ago? So
it was purple, and it was a sugar-loaded drink in honor of Grimace's quote birthday.
Who's Grimace? I don't even know. I don't even understand
he's
this.
the purple thing, the purple McDonald's mascot.
Oh,
the shake became
did
a
that
sensation.
really have a 10% effect on their?
It's been mostly attributed to that milkshake. It became a sensation after TikTok users posted videos of themselves pretending to die after drinking the shake. Man, what happened when I was in prison, dude? What are you people? That's content now? No wonder our numbers suck. We're not pretending to die after drinking purple milkshakes. I'm not doing that for TikTok views. I'm sorry, I don't care that much. But McDonald's has also said that for the past several quarters that some customers, particularly low-wage earners, are revolting against what many see as bad value. Beginning last year, we warned of a more discriminating customer, particularly among lower-income households. Well, look, if they're eating McDonald's, they're not that discriminatory.
Yeah, and backing up a second, there's definitely been a decline in other areas, like the computer industry has also declined. There's fewer computer sales being made.
Yeah,
today.
the economy in general is on a downward decline. So the company in December unveiled an expansion of its strategic plan to lure back price-conscious customers. There's a new popular $5 menu that was introduced earlier this summer. But I'm not here to advertise for McDonald's. They have a new thing. It's a $5 value meal. I don't know what you get. I don't care what you get. I'm not going to tell you what you get because I'm not advertising for them. But for the last couple of years of America's inflation crisis, according to CNN, which has been going on for more than a century at this point, restaurants and food companies like McDonald's and Coca-Cola said consumers were responding well to constant price increases and were willing to shell out more for their favorite meals, snacks, and treats. Apparently, only Domino's has managed to stay ahead and still return profits and increases in sales, whereas all of these others have customers saying no to higher prices. And that's because Domino's apparently just has prices you can't beat, where instead of going to McDonald's, apparently, they're going to Domino's to get a large pizza for $10, which is a lot more food and slightly better quality probably than what you get at McDonald's for $10.
You know what's weird is I actually noticed more of a price difference with Domino's, at least in Keene, after they reopened than before, because the price went up like 3 times or something like that.
The place was closed through a lot of the price changes as a result of the inflation.
Yeah, and then when they reopen, like there used to be like you get these coupon deals and like I don't know, like it's just the price. I just noticed the huge price increase.
McDonald's in particular has been the focus of some customers' irritation. A viral social media post last year showing an $18 Big Mac meal set off an online backlash to what many customers believed was corporate greed making inflation worse for everyday Americans. And that's something that Democrats love saying, that there is no inflation. It's just corporations being greedy. And they're making inflation worse. They have no control over the money supply. And money supply is what causes inflation.
Yeah, I mean, there's
money supply is inflation.
There's so many problems here, though. Like our entire idea of like what things should cost is like so messed up. The government takes a lot of money from us, right? Like just the consumer or the general public, you know, the wage earner, and then they subsidize food, right? Too. So like it's not like nothing is what it should be. Like you should be making twice what you're making now, but the price of McDonald's should be 3 times what it is.
Yeah, because it is a lot of food for that amount of money. It's not high quality food.
It's not high quality, but food does cost something to produce.
It does. And the government subsidizes it. helps McDonald's to pay for all of its little beef slaughtering facilities and all of that, and that in turn makes McDonald's cheaper for you to go. And that's part of the reason that vegetables and fruits and stuff are considered to be so much higher cost than just going to McDonald's, because the government, shockingly, is not subsidizing you to eat fruits and vegetables, which would make sense and would make you more healthy. Instead, McDonald's petitioned and lobbied the government, and the government said, yeah, we'll donate, $1 billion of farmland to you each year.
Yeah, you can actually sometimes compare like different countries in terms of like dollars and costs and things like that. Like if you look at a car in the US that might run $40,000, it's $120,000 or more in like Europe, right? Or the price of gas, a couple dollars in the United States is $8 in Europe or something along those lines.
You know what we never got into last week?
What was that?
Kamala Harris becoming the presidential candidate. 603-283-6160, because that's worth talking about, and I haven't really weighed in on it at all, and I guess you probably haven't either. So we're going to do that. It is Free Talk Live.
Excuse me, is this where I get a license to start a new business?
I wouldn't be hasty. You have to get a license to go out of business, too,
Oh, well, look, I've invented this little anti-gravity machine, see?
Oh, is that why you're walking 2 inches above the floor?
Oh, yes, it's very comfortable. It saves on shoe leather.
Yeah, well, you have to fill out these forms and report to the Human Services Department of Manpower Orientation and register with the Fair Employment Practice Commission, the Wage and Hour Division of the Employment Standards Administration, the State Sales and Income Tax Division, the Internal Revenue Service, and the Social Security Administration of the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, and, of course, OSHA.
OSHA? I thought that was a little town in Wisconsin.
You'll find out. Say, floating around like that could be dangerous. Have you checked with the Consumer Product Safety Commission?
Well, not yet.
Come to think of it, you actually are flying, aren't you? Look, you need to go over to the Federal Aviation Administration and the Transportation...
It's very hard to get anything done these days if you're in business, but free enterprise built this country. Think what could happen if we don't keep it free. A public service of this station and the Center for the Defense of Free Enterprise, Bellevue, Washington.
Besides, we just can't have people floating about unregulated,
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone. 2 children have been killed and 9 other children injured in a stabbing attack in Southport, United Kingdom. A 17-year-old suspect is in police custody, but his motive has not been made public. Stuart Smith reports.
Parents speaking to local media in Merseyside have told of the cries of traumatised children as a man went on an attacking spree in a coastal town north of Liverpool. The local children's hospital has declared a major incident. The police say 1 arrest has been made and there is no wider risk to the public. The man's intentions and motivations have not been reported. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has called the incident horrendous and deeply shocking. Stuart Smith, London.
The son of jailed Mexican crime boss El Chapo is due in a Chicago court this week after surrendering to US authorities. It's reported he may have been working with officials on his surrender and fooled another drug trafficker to come with him. Mitch McCann reports.
Joaquin Guzman Lopez arrived at an airfield last week in New Mexico, where he was met by US officials who took him into custody. Alongside Lopez was Ismael Almayo Zambara Garcia, who it's reported was fooled into making the journey with Lopez, who was in on the scheme. Almayo is a well-known Mexican crime boss who founded the infamous Sinaloa cartel with the father of Lopez, El Chapo, who was serving a life sentence in a US prison. Almayo pleaded not guilty to drugs charges, including continuing criminal enterprise, narcotics importation and money laundering a short time after his arrest. His lawyer has told US media he was not in the country voluntarily and that he was forcibly kidnapped. Meanwhile, Lopez, who has been indicted on drugs charges, is expected to appear in a Chicago court later this week. Mitch McCann, New York.
UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres and other UN officials have condemned Saturday's rocket attack on a football field in the occupied Golan Heights. At least 12 people were killed, mainly children and teenagers, and fears are mounting of a full-blown conflict amid the latest attack between Israel and Hezbollah. Jody Jacobs reports.
The Secretary-General has called for restraint, fearing escalating violence in the region. In a statement released over the weekend, Antonio Guterres said civilians and children in particular should not continue to bear the burden of the horrific violence. It went on to say that the Secretary-General is urging all parties to exercise maximum restraint and reiterates once again his consistent calls on all concerned to avoid any further escalation. Another statement released by the UN Special Coordinator for Lebanon also condemned the attack, Araldo Lazario, calling for civilians to be protected. Jody Jacobs, New York.
Olympics officials called off the triathlon event on Monday due to poor water quality in the River Seine. It's a second day of subpar water that's ruled out swimming events. If the water doesn't improve, the event could become a biathlon with just running and...
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, 603-283-6160. If you want to weigh in, there is still time. Again, that number is 603-283-6160. And with you in the studio tonight, it's Aria.
And Mr. Penguin.
And I want to say thank you to our amplifiers. These are the people who keep the show going. And I used to have a list of the amplifiers, but I'm currently looking for it. Anyway, you can find that at amps.freetalklive.com. That's amps.freetalklive.com. That's our Patreon. That will take you directly there, and you can join us, support the show for as little as $5 per month. That's all it takes. You can contribute more if you want, but $5 per month is all we ask. And there's no real benefits for doing this other than showing your love and support for the show, and it helps us keep advertisements off the show. And like the only real live read we have right now is the Dash one. Everything else we're like advertising free. We don't do the commercials. We don't really have any control over that right now, especially if you're listening on terrestrial radio. If you're listening on our video streams, yes, we do have control over those, but they're all like LRN content, so they're not really commercials, just advertisements for the other stuff we're doing. Anyway, the only real advertisement that we have these days is our Dash sponsorship, and it's because of our supporters on Patreon that we don't have to bend over and take it by these corporations and then sell things like Dynavites and magic fruit pills that make you healthy, or whatever it is that Alex Jones is selling these days. And Chris LaRoe is tonight's amplifier. Chris is actually a diamond level member, which means that Chris is donating $50 per month to the program. But again, we don't ask that. $5 per month gets you in. That's all we want. Thank you, Chris, though, for your support, for going so far above and beyond what everyone else is doing. We genuinely appreciate it here on the show. And it does get you access to the Free Talk Cast a day early. Sometime that Thursday, I upload it to the Patreon. This week was a little bit late. It came Thursday afternoon instead of Thursday at midnight. I couldn't do anything about that, but that's how things played out. And, you still got it early, but that's not really a perk that's advertised. That's not something we're offering there. I am offering it on the LRN Patreon, so there I have to do it. But with the Free Talk Live one, I don't have to do it. It's just, here's a free bonus. You get the podcast early. So sign up because you love the show and you want to show your support, not because you want anything out of it, because you're not going to get anything out of it except these random shout-outs. So thank you so much, amps.freetalklive.com. Now, we meant to discuss it like a week ago and then the week before, whenever the hell it happened. Joe Biden has agreed to not run for president in 2024.
This is news to me.
I know. I
thought he was running.
This. Yeah, well, he was, but he no longer is.
Oh, what happened?
His debate performance was so terrible, and the pressure from people for him to withdraw because of that debate performance was so overwhelming.
I thought I was going to hear that he passed away.
No, that was Bonnie's theory, and she got into that briefly during the latest episode of Free Talk Cast. Again, that's freetalkcast.com, because he was diagnosed with COVID-19 right around the same time that he withdrew from the race, and then he just went missing for at least 24 hours. As it turns out, since then, he said some stuff, so he seems to still be as alive as he's ever been. And I phrase that because I'm not really sure how alive Joe Biden actually is. I mean, he's close to, how old is he, 85?
I know he's in his 80s. I'm pretty sure we concluded.
Dude is old, and Trump is old. Trump is not a spring chicken, guys.
Nope.
If we're going to hold Biden's age against him, we kind of have to point out the fact that Trump is also really old. Biden seems to be in better health physically in that he isn't as overweight as Trump is, but Trump certainly hasn't beat on mental faculties. And this became readily apparent in the debate where Trump delivered the excruciatingly painful line, "I don't know what he said at the end of that sentence, and I really don't think he knows what he said either," regarding something that Joe Biden had said. And that was one of the sickest burns I've heard in American politics, because it wasn't overly cruel or mean. It was just a statement of fact. And he's right. I didn't know what Joe Biden said either.
It was pretty funny.
And I don't think Joe Biden did either. But none of this is new. This has all been going on for a very long time, like double the pressure or whatever it was he said, where he just sort of makes up words.
It's kind of funny too, because like usually they have something to say that to respond with that doesn't answer the question, right? So like you could almost normally use that line, but it was clear that he really, really had no idea what he was talking about.
It was clear in a few moments that he completely lost his train of thought.
He didn't even remember the line that he was supposed to read.
Yeah.
That didn't answer the question.
I feel confident that on a few occasions he forgot what question he had been asked.
Yes, absolutely.
And he just rambled on and started talking about the border or whatever other nonsense happened to come to the front of his mind. Or the COVID-19 thing really got me. So there were several moments during the debate where he was clearly not all there. But this isn't new. This was the case in 2020. And this is my issue with Biden deciding now that he's not running. Why is Harris why is she the new presidential candidate? The Democrats throughout the United States didn't nominate her. They didn't vote for her. They had their primaries and they voted for Joe Biden. So how can that just be switched at the drop of a hat because the DNC, the Democratic National Convention, has decided that it should be Kamala Harris? I recognize that she's his vice president right now.
I think I know the answer to this one, and I think supposedly it has to do with the fact that they hadn't voted, their delegates hadn't voted for Biden, and it was the delegates that you vote for or something like that.
That's the way the Republicans do it. I didn't think that was the way the Democrats do it.
I guess that's the way the Democrats do it too, but
the Democrats have this weird super delegate thing as well.
Yeah, I honestly, I don't know that much detail about it. I just, that's just my understanding of how it was explained about why it isn't an issue, and so they get to vote, and now it's kind of like I think it sounded to me like it was kind of like when we vote for president, I guess on the ballot, you vote for somebody and then a delegate goes to Washington and makes it official.
And they're supposed to represent you, I guess?
Yeah, but if that person were to die, they could vote for somebody else that wasn't the person that you voted for.
I know that's the case with Republicans because that's the reason that Ron Paul got some delegates a few years ago. Whatever year that was that he ran for president, he got some Republican delegates that he probably wasn't supposed to get. Because they're not bound to vote in accordance with what their primaries.
Yeah, I want to say this is
in some states.
What do they call it? It's a difference between a democracy and a representative democracy or a representative republic or I don't know, something.
It's all very strange and confusing. I'm not a fan though of Donald Trump, the felon, and Kamala Harris, the cop. And that's what this election ultimately is. And I don't have any issue with Donald Trump being a felon. I'm a felon. And I cannot stress that enough to people because even my friends love making the joke. Oh, well, now I guess a convicted felon can just become president. I'm like, hey, when you look down on convicted felons, you are looking down on me. You know that, right? when you judge Trump for being you can judge him for all sorts of crap, but when you judge him for being a felon, you're also judging me. And I don't think they realize that. And they're probably judging half of their friends and family that they don't know are also felons. And likely convicted felons.
Yeah, you know what I always think is amazing is that everybody's, or I don't want to say everybody, but frequently people are like, oh, we need to make this a felony, and they don't understand what a felony is supposed to be or what it was originally. A felony was murder. You murdered somebody, right?
A felony is supposed to be a big deal. It's with you the rest of your life.
Right, making everything a felony and everybody into a felon kind of diminishes the whole point of what a felony is. A felony is now somebody you look up to as opposed to somebody you look down upon.
For the rest of my life, I will not be able to keep and bear arms and work certain jobs.
That may not be entirely true. I mean, there's probably a number of circumstances where that could not be true. If the law changed or...
Well, possibly, but as things currently stand,
right, sure,
for the rest of my life, I will know, or to have any dangerous weapon or any way of defending myself. And that's going to be the case for the rest of my life. It's going to be a struggle to get jobs in a lot of cases. Not necessarily with me because I have a job that I like and that I'm not going to get fired from. So that works out. But a lot of people are going to have a very difficult time. They're going to end up having to work at the Waffle House or something because no one else wants to hire convicted felons. And that's going to follow them for the rest of their lives. And that's going to follow me for the rest of my life for not having a license to sell Bitcoin. That was my crime. Not having a literally not having a business license is the reason that I can never carry a gun.
So laughable, right? Like,
it's laughable if it's not happening to you.
Because I know, but like if you just think about it for a moment, right?
I mean, it's laughable to me too.
They're
but I react to everything
with murderers, like serial killers. This is the level of absurdity because you didn't ask for a permission slip. You're now as horrible of a person as a serial killer.
Yeah, and the word criminal gets thrown around in the same kind of way, but felon is a bit worse than criminal. I mean, once you call someone a felon, and once someone is a felon, that is a life-altering thing. And I didn't care at the time, and I don't care now, because being a felon is not really going to affect my life in any direction or the other, as far as I can tell. It hasn't yet. Granted, I've only been a convicted felon for like a year and a half. And I've only been free from prison for about 2 months. But it doesn't seem to really be having. I didn't carry a gun anyway, except for when I was running for sheriff.
I suspect, Aria, it has the potential to massively impact your life. It's just that you ended up in circumstances where it isn't likely to impact you because of things like skill sets and like you don't need to go for a background check to like repair computers, right?
Also a really good point.
You don't need a background check to be on the air for Free Talk Live. You're not somebody who's without any skills looking for a job. So you don't have to worry about, like there's all these things that are like, and you didn't own a gun and you never were interested in owning a gun. So like,
well, I had bought a gun.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it has had some impact on you. Maybe not.
I had bought one while running for sheriff. I actually went with someone who does the show here frequently to a gun shop here in New Hampshire, and I paid all but $1 for the gun. It was like $600, and because I didn't have a New Hampshire ID, they had to do a background check and some other stuff, and they were like, okay, we're going to wait the 3 days or whatever to take the other $1 out of your account because we have to make sure if you have a New Hampshire license, you can go into any gun shop at any time and buy a gun and like walk out with it, which is awesome. But if you don't have a New Hampshire license, you have to go through the 3-day waiting period stuff.
Oh, okay.
And that was why they left $1 because technically I hadn't fully paid for the gun at that point. So it wasn't my gun. Mm-hmm. And, weird stuff going on. I never actually picked that up because I really didn't care about it. And I ended up carrying a 9mm. Like I got the money back eventually by not going to pick it up and, obviously not paying that other $1 because I had stuff going on and I forgot about it. And I was open carrying a 9mm anyway. But that was the only time in my life that I carried a 9mm. That said, at that particular time, I definitely needed to be carrying a gun on me because by then my property had been damaged all across New Hampshire. My house had been vandalized. My car had been vandalized. Things had been stolen out of my yard. And I was the target of at least one hate crime, one actual hate crime where someone spray painted fag and slashed my tires and slashed the top of my convertible, which all seemed to be either because I was trans or because I was running for sheriff. But whichever one of those things it was, or whether it was both, it really didn't make a difference. The takeaway was that I need to be able to protect myself because one of these crazy lunatics is going to encounter me. And that was why I began open carrying the gun. And it looked really cool as I was running for sheriff, right? It did. So, but that I don't care about it. And because once you introduce a gun to any sort of altercation, someone has to get shot. There are ways of backing down from that, but once someone pulls a gun from their holster, someone's getting shot, man.
Yeah, this is actually an interesting sort of scenario. Because like let's just use a convenience store out of like from like as an example. If you've got yourself a guy robbing the store, right? Like, do you really and we might be talking about $100, right? He's like, maybe they'll get what's in the cash register or they're walking out with some candy. Do you really want to kill somebody over that? And I personally wouldn't, but there's some interesting options that are less lethal force wise.
Generally the advice is to just give them the money.
Yeah.
That way no one dies.
But at the same time, you might want to use it. You might still have some amount of protection, right? Like, or have something that's less than lethal that might protect you, but it won't kill them, right? So like if somebody comes in, doesn't have a gun.
Like a beanbag gun, that sort of thing?
Yeah, something along those lines. I guess there's like guns that
tasers
shoot like some sort of thing that will really hurt you, but it won't kill you.
Yeah, like a beanbag gun. It'll hurt like hell.
Like a beanbag gun.
But it won't. I mean, I guess if it hits you in your temple, it might kill you.
Yeah, I think so. One of the examples,
but there are a lot non-lethal ammunitions out there.
I want to say there's an example that's like more of like a paintball gun, but like it somehow is, I guess, worse than a paintball gun because obviously a paintball gun's not going to stop somebody from robbing you.
No, but they don't feel good.
Right, that's true.
But I've seen images of people shot by the beanbag guns, and some of them are pretty brutal, especially at protesters and stuff like that.
Yeah.
After Black Lives Matter protests, people love showing those off online of where they got shot by beanbag guns, and they are brutal, massive bruises, because it's a beanbag flying at you at 250 miles per second or whatever. It's gonna hurt. It's not gonna pierce your skin. It might damage some vital organs, but not life-threateningly.
That kind of makes me wonder now what the restrictions on like weapons are exactly. So,
well, it's I can't own any dangerous weapons.
I mean.
And that covers pretty much everything.
That cover? So, like, could you own a beanbag gun, or is that?
No, that would be a dangerous weapon.
That would be a dangerous weapon. Could you own a car?
Yes, I can clearly own a car.
You can own a car, but you can't own a beanbag gun, even though one will kill you and the other won't.
Well, the primary purpose of the beanbag weapon is to be a weapon, whereas the primary purpose of a car is not to be a weapon.
Gun would at most be more defensive, not deadly. So you would think that it would be okay to have a beanbag gun.
Well, it's more about what the thing is versus how it can be used. And we saw this when Nobody got arrested a few years ago in Manchester. He's a convicted felon as well. He has been for a while, and he had a machete in the trunk of his car. And
a gardening tool.
Yes, a gardening tool. But also, like, I was in prison with a dude called Machete, and he was called Machete for a reason that had nothing to do with gardening.
Yep.
So, like, I understand. I'm not saying they were right, but I do understand where the cops were coming from by assuming it was a weapon.
Yeah. So, I mean, backing up here a moment, I do want to clarify something. This was before the Crypto 6 arrest.
Yes, it was.
But after Nobody's arrest for selling weed, basically, that he got convicted on.
Right. That was like 2007 or something that happened. Well, it was after that.
It was 2000. I think it was 2012, and like the conviction was probably like 2014 or something like that. Anyway,
it was well before the Crypto 6.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, he was found not guilty.
He was.
So yeah.
But even though a machete can absolutely kill someone and can be used as a dangerous weapon, it's not in and of itself a dangerous weapon. The same thing with the hammer. You can absolutely beat someone to death with a hammer, but I'm not going to get arrested for having a hammer in my car because it's a tool.
You know, and I think something to clarify is that
I don't have a hammer in my car.
This is such a stupid thing to ban felons from owning weapons,
especially the non-violent ones.
Like, well, that's the thing. Like, this is. A felon is supposed to be somebody who's violent, right? Like somebody who's murdered another person, and that's the problem.
Or raped, or stolen large quantities of stuff, or
breaking
and entering,
serious violent crimes,
seriously violating.
I'm not even
person,
sure.
yeah.
I'm not even sure breaking and entering counts. At least from the original, like.
I think it should because, like, I wouldn't.
Whether
want
it does or not,
it
wasn't originally, right? Like that's kind of the point that I'm making, right? Like, and maybe it was originally. I don't know for sure, but I'm just saying I don't think it was. It was like we're talking about serious crime, not like petty stuff, not shoplifting, right? Like
the general way I look at it is, would I feel more threatened if this person had a gun while they did this thing? And if so, then that they probably should not be allowed to have a gun because they committed this crime, like breaking and entering. Would I want someone breaking and entering in my house to have a gun or not have a gun? Well, I'd rather they not have a gun. And if someone has a history of breaking and entering, I'd rather they break and enter into my house without a gun.
I mean, the problem is, though, like, once you've released somebody, you're not going to prevent them from having a gun by passing laws that say they can't have guns. That's just going to be a penalty that you end up charging them with once they've committed another crime, right? And to enhance it, right? So it's not, it really doesn't have the effect that, like,
I mean, if
the point of the law is intended to have.
If they're willing to violate the legal conditions that bind them as felons, then yeah, right. But I'm not willing to violate those conditions. I'm not willing.
Which is why we don't need you. There would be a law to prevent you from having a gun.
Okay,
right?
Fair.
Like isn't
Plus,
this
me
is
having
this
a gun
kinda,
does not make anyone any less safe as I sold Bitcoin.
Right. Exactly. Right. So like
no relation whatsoever.
There's that's the problem. There's no relation between prohibiting people from having guns or weapons with like actual violence.
Right.
And if there's no connection, what's the point? It's just punishment for the sake of punishment.
It is, and it's a little more serious than that in my case because I am a targeted figure, not just because of my political work, but yes, because I'm trans as well. That was what caused my car to literally be vandalized, right? Like someone has literally attacked my property at this point. I've literally been attacked in the past physically as a result of being trans. That gives me a little bit more need to carry a gun on me than perhaps your average straight cis white male like Mark Edge.
Yep.
And I understand his desire to be able to own a firearm as well, and I understand everyone's desire to own a firearm, but some people are just a little more likely to be targeted than others.
So I'm trying to think here. Are you aware of the constitutional issue that has come about as a result of the other Supreme Court rulings that will eventually be heard probably by the Supreme Court?
I know there was something here in New Hampshire that happened.
No, federal level.
Was it federal level?
Yeah. So unfortunately, this has happened a while ago now. But one of the
something when I was in prison happened at the New Hampshire level that may restore voting gun rights to felons
in New Hampshire, but I don't think that would apply at the federal level. So it wouldn't apply to you.
Would it if I was in the state of New Hampshire?
I don't think it would apply to you because isn't there also a federal issue?
I don't know. Not if I don't cross state lines, I don't think. I'm not an attorney, and I don't really have any desire to find out anyway.
So my understanding is that the courts ruled, so it has something to do with like the law can't be more restrictive than like it was like when like the Constitution was like made or something or created. Like you can't be more restrictive than that. Gun restrictions, right?
One thing that I really liked about pretrial was something along those lines where the historical precedent was that the restrictions you could impose upon somebody awaiting trial couldn't be any more restrictive than the bare minimum possible to ensure that they followed the law.
Okay. So the felons back in the day could own guns. It was something along that line. Okay. So based on the court's logic,
well, everyone could own guns then.
Well,
right. You had to have a gun to shoot the bear that was living in your backyard.
No restrictions when the right was instituted. So as a result, felons, in theory, under the court's logic, have every right to own a gun. We're talking about violent, and I'm not just talking about aria, stupid felony. I'm talking about like actual killers, murderers, serial killers. They have the right to own a gun in the United States under the court's logic.
Well, and I don't necessarily disagree. They have the right to. I'm not happy about it. I'd rather not have a bunch of killers and rapists and stuff carrying around guns. But in such a world, it just means that I need to be able to carry a gun too. And if we lived in a world where known killers and known rapists were running around with guns, I would be a little more inclined to carry a gun as well. And I feel like that's probably what is going to keep a person safe. As weird as it seems, that does seem to be the case. No one is going to attack the place where everyone is armed. That would be crazy. It would be suicide and you would achieve nothing. Not that you achieve anything by attacking anywhere in the first place, but you're not going to get very far if you attempt to, shoot up a New Hampshire gun store or whatever. You're not going to get very far. You might not get a single shot fired before you get put down.
One of the things I have noticed about New Hampshire is you don't hear about people like robbing places as much.
No, because it's crazy to break into a New Hampshire house. There's a really good chance the homeowner has a gun.
Every other house has an armory.
And they will shoot you.
Yep.
And there is no law that's going to punish them whatsoever for doing that. Once you break into their place, man, they don't have to tell you to get out. They don't have to give you the benefit of the doubt. All they have to do is shoot you.
Yeah. I lived in New Jersey, and not even in like the terrible parts of New Jersey, which is most of New Jersey. I lived in like the nicer areas of New Jersey that was away from the crime. And even there, like people would every once in a while, like every couple of years, you hear about like people houses being broken into.
Yeah.
And I've been here in New Hampshire for 8 years or so now, and I've heard of some businesses being robbed, but I've never heard of a house being broken into that I can think of.
That's a good point. I don't think I can recall any. I'm sure it's happened. I'm sure that
I'm not saying it hasn't happened. I just haven't heard of it.
Yeah, I'm sure it's happened, but it's not very common. New Hampshire seems to be one of the safest places you can live. Well, we're out of time for tonight. You can join us online in the meantime, again, on our social media server. You can find that at social.freetalklive.com. But in the meantime, check out the Free Talk Live podcast. You might enjoy it. It's short, it's easy to listen to, easy to share. You can find that at freetalkcast.com. It's Free Talk Live.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where